Apocalypse. I can steal superpowers. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. Embarrassment. GLUO was like a wild boar rushing into a vegetable garden, guarding the cabbage he had set his eyes on, and had a very bad attitude towards other people, not to mention coveting his cabbage. GLUO would bar his teeth at others, even if they came a little closer. GLUO, are you here to help, or to make trouble? Sukinghan came out of the inner room carrying the finished cake. When GLUO saw Sukinghan, he immediately stood up from his chair and made an embarrassed expression on his face. No, I'm just afraid that you're too busy. GLUO was also thick-skinned. He didn't care about the sarcasm in Sukinghan's words, and he was not ashamed, but proud of it. Sukinghan looked at his expression of being a dead pig not afraid of boiling water, sighed, and couldn't help but smile. Thank you. If you didn't come, I really couldn't have lunch. Don't be polite, we are friends. Friends, help each other. GLUO took the cake from Sukinghan's hand very attentively. The girl glared at him, but didn't say much. She just took out the notebook from before and started delivering cakes according to the numbers. Sukinghan opened this cake shop, not for the purpose of making much money, so even on this day, when there were the most customers, she was very restrained and refused the request for customization. The cakes she gave to everyone were all the newly developed Christmas specials, so it saved a lot of effort to make them. After handing the cakes to the customers, the waiting young people left reluctantly. Before leaving, these people would slash GLUO's eyes like a knife, with a very fierce attitude. I have become a public enemy. GLUO watched the last customer leave, pretending to show a worried expression. Sukinghan was amused by his funny expression and raised his hand to hit him, but was blocked by GLUO's slap. Return from death. In the unintentional contact, GLUO's innate ability changed again. Sukinghan, who had his superpowers taken away, did not feel anything at all and still had a happy smile on his face. What do you want to do? I yelled. GLUO still had a funny expression on his face. After so many days of contact with Sukinghan, he had gotten used to the occasional contact between the two. The change in his innate abilities had become a normal thing for him. Compared to this, Sukinghan's occasional warm smile made GLUO's heart flutter. Stop making trouble. It's time to eat. Sukinghan didn't hit GLUO again. She went back to the inner room and put out a small folding table. GLUO skillfully brought out 2 small stools and placed them on both sides of the table. Come try my cooking. GLUO opened 2 thermos buckets and brought out the food layer by layer. Then he unscrewed the lid of the thermos and poured Sukinghan a glass of lemonade. Well, it's good. Sukinghan didn't use a spoon, but found 2 pairs of disposable chopsticks from the store. She tasted both dishes and nodded in praise. The girl was not the kind of person who was ostentatious and would not deliberately flatter and praise. Even if she thought the food tasted good and she liked it, she would not say it so confidently. GLUO understood Sukinghan's personality, so he was already very satisfied to get this answer from her. If you don't have a special interest, cooking is actually a very boring and troublesome thing, especially since it has to be repeated every day, and it may even be repeated 3 times a day. GLUO used to learn cooking skills in a restaurant, not a big restaurant, but a street vendor. After a few months of training, the taste of the food sold there was almost the same. Street vendors don't really care about how good the taste is. You just need to practice more, think more, look at recipes and cooking methods on the internet, and slowly your skills will improve. Later, GLUO quit the job of preparing side dishes and became a chef in a small store. His salary increased a lot, but the work was also tiring. After a few months, GLUO quit his job and went to sell insurance. Although GLUO has some cooking skills, he lives alone and rarely makes any troublesome meals. He just makes do with what he has. Cooking is actually quite tiring and troublesome. But when cooking today, GLUO was in a very high mood. Even when dealing with meat and vegetables, he tried to make the slices and shreds uniform. It can even be said that this is the first time in so many years that GLUO has cooked so carefully. Moreover, it is for others. GLUO was eating, and although his eyes deliberately avoided Sukinghan, he would still look at her unconsciously. Sukinghan is a big eater, so GLUO deliberately filled her with food. The taste was good and the quantity was sufficient. The girl ate happily, and didn't even notice the rice grains on the corners of her mouth. "Hey, buy cake, is anyone there?" At this time, the voice of a customer suddenly came from outside. Sukinghan put down her chopsticks and was about to go over, but was suddenly stopped by GLUO. Sukinghan stopped and turned to look at him. GLUO reached out and took the rice grains from the corners of her mouth. "There is a grain of rice. Thank you." Sukinghan didn't expect that GLUO didn't tell her, but took the grain of rice with his own hands. The expression on the girl's face froze for a moment, nodded, stood up and hurried out. "You were careless, didn't dodge." GLUO looked at the grain of rice in between, and his heart was inexplicably entangled, but after 2 or 3 seconds, GLUO still threw the grain of rice into his mouth and chewed it. Because he was afraid of embarrassment later, GLUO stopped staring and began to eat rice in big mouthfuls. After eating a few mouthfuls of rice, GLUO reached out his hand for some reason, pinched a grain of rice, and put it on the table. This way, it should be less embarrassing. To be honest, GLUO also felt that he was a little reckless just now, but he was a little embarrassed, and he couldn't help it. If he did it again, it would definitely be the same result. GLUO thought about how to ease the embarrassment, and his hands did not stop moving, speeding up the action of eating. Since you can't think of how to solve the embarrassment, eat quickly and run. Time can solve everything. Meet again in the evening. Pretend nothing happened. Have a happy party. Perfect solution. While GLUO was still struggling, Sukinghan had already walked back. There was no expression on the girl's face, but her muscles were a little stiff. She sat down and continued to eat. Inexplicably, the atmosphere between the two was a little awkward, and no one spoke until the meal was over. After dinner, the two packed up their things familiarly. GLUO carried the thermos bucket and planned to go home immediately. Sukinghan did not keep him, but also sent him to the door. "GLUO, tonight is Christmas Eve. You cook less. I will bring a cake back." "Well, okay." GLUO did not expect that Sukinghan would still speak at this time and in this atmosphere. He breathed a sigh of relief and nodded vigorously. In fact, whether it was Sukinghan or GLUO, they all understood that this matter was not a big deal, but both of them thought that the other party would care. So, they were embarrassed together. Chapter 52. Expectation. Under Sukinghan's farewell gaze, GLUO slowly left the cake shop, but when he walked away, he immediately became agitated. "Is this what telepathy is? I love it. I love it." GLUO was really excited and happy. After all, today is Christmas Eve, and it was also the Christmas Eve that Sukinghan took the initiative to propose to have dinner together. See, the facts prove that if you lick the dog to the end, you will get everything you want. Sukinghan definitely felt his sincere heart, although he was not sincere or sincere. But in short, Sukinghan ignored other people, but only for GLUO. He showed care comparable to that for kittens and puppies. What is this? This is true love. After all, who would be nice to kittens and puppies if they didn't like them? After GLUO's joy, he felt a little bored again. Anyway, he couldn't tell why. His heart was as messy as grass. He was not unhappy, but uncomfortable. Perhaps this is guilt and a guilty conscience. This hypocritical inner drama came and went quickly. When GLUO returned home, he had successfully abandoned his guilt. 13:47 on December 24th, 3005. So soon. It's almost 2 o'clock. GLUO washed his hands and came out to check his watch. He realized that it was already afternoon. He spent a lot of time in the cake shop. If he didn't deal with it, the shrimp and fish might die. Sukinghan didn't say he would come back early, but it shouldn't be too late. Let's set it at 7 o'clock. The meal will start at 7 o'clock. GLUO actually had a little idea in his mind now. He planned to pick up Sukinghan a little earlier, prepare the meal, and then go home from the North Street. During the Christmas days, both sides of the North Street were hung with shining light strips. It was very beautiful at night. Such a romantic scene. The two of them strolled on the street. Gluo found the right opportunity and gave her the gift. Sukinghan must be very moved and her favorability would rise. Perfect. Gluo had already prepared the future scene in his head. He was afraid that he would leave the gift behind later, so he first stuffed the gift box into his coat pocket. He would wear this coat to pick up Sukinghan later, and he would take it out of his right pocket. Cook, come on to consolidate my position in Sukinghan's heart. Gluo rushed into the kitchen with great momentum. First checked the ingredients that had been processed before, and after confirming that there was no problem, Gluo began to cut the fresh food. The shrimp thread of each live shrimp must be carefully removed, and the shrimp head that was difficult to pull was also processed in advance, so as to ensure that Sukinghan's meal was convenient. Steamed turbot. The weight of the fish is very particular. Too big or too small is not suitable, and the steaming time cannot be too long. Too long the meat will fall apart, and it will be rotten and not beautiful. The finishing touch was the skill of making pancakes that Gluo had learned on purpose. Rice flour, corn flour, and wheat flour were mixed with eggs in appropriate proportions, and the heat was particularly important when frying and baking. Gluo hadn't cooked so seriously for a long time, even for many years. He had no distractions, and it didn't matter whether he could move Sukinghan. All Gluo wanted was to see her smile. Time flies so fast. Gluo put the last pancake on the plate and stretched his body. Only then did he realize that it was already dark. Well, basically everything is done, except for cooking. The steak and turbot can't be left alone. They must be cooked right away. The others can wait. Gluo looked at the watch and found that it was almost 6 o'clock. He didn't care about cleaning up the mess of pancakes and sat directly on the pan to start cooking. Shrimp must be cooked first, followed by the salad. That doesn't care about time. The stir-fried vegetables can't be left for too long. When the turbot is steamed in the pot, you can go out and wait for him and Sukinghan to come back and then fry the steak. Gluo's plan was perfect. Although he was a little flustered when executing it, everything was completed on time. Gluo finally put the fish into the steamer, and the time just pointed to 7 o'clock. Time is money, my friend. Gluo was very satisfied with his speed. He took off his apron, put on his shirt in a hurry, and started running out. Compared with the brightly lit high-rise buildings, the popularity of the old street was much colder. Most of the lights in the houses were off, and the windows with lights on were mostly not close to each other. They were shining lonely in 2s and 3s. However, it was not without good things today. Gluo didn't see any vagrants along the way. It was estimated that those hooligans also wanted to celebrate Christmas, and now they all went to the bar to have fun. It was considered a good thing. Gluo exhaled. Because of the temperature, the breath turned into white mist. The weather forecast said that there would be snow today, but unfortunately, until now, no snowflakes have fallen. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the distance, the flashing fireworks were flying towards the sky, drawing brilliant tracks, and exploded into a brilliant appearance in the high dark night. Christmas Eve is obviously a Western holiday, but when the family celebrates it, they still like to set off fireworks. At this moment, I don't know how many people are looking up at the same time, looking at the same sky splendid with fireworks, each experiencing their own sadness and sweetness. Fireworks sang, "Don't stop, I may want to watch it with my girlfriend later." Gluo didn't expect that someone would set off fireworks at this time. He was no longer willing to walk slowly, and instead began to run wildly without any image. Hurry up, hurry up. Gluo wanted to see Sukinghan now, and then watch the fireworks with her, walk on the road, like countless couples, walking shoulder to shoulder. Oh. At this moment, Gluo seemed to be enlightened, and suddenly saw his heart clearly. What contact with Sukinghan, what close to the world of evolvers, what as a third party to find out everything. He admitted that now he has gradually forgotten the original purpose. There is no way. Sukinghan is so beautiful. Who doesn't like her? He is indeed a little greedy for her body, but he is also very greedy for the entanglement and tenderness between her eyebrows. He has known Soo-kyung-hun for more than a month, and he is really fascinated by her. Not the evolver who killed him fiercely when they first met, nor the Avenger who later blew up the Zinki branch and buried more than 100 people in the ruins. The real Soo-kyung-hun is an 18-year-old girl, a little mature, a little timid, and a little stubborn. Although she pretends not to want to contact anyone, in fact, she is also eager for others to get close to her. She frowned, hesitated, smiled, sat, stubborn, and gave up. Face after face, expression after expression, Jialuo ran in the cold night without feeling the cold at all. At this moment, his head was full of him. He wanted to see her smiling face, and watch the fireworks flashing with her. The moonlight is so beautiful. So, Jialuo ran across the long street, looking forward to Soo-kyung-hun's expression when she saw him, looking forward to it so much that he couldn't help but smile. Finally, Jialuo saw the lonely spring cake shop in the dark night. He waved his hands excitedly, wanting Soo-kyung-hun to see him immediately. However, she didn't. There was nothing there. Chapter 53, Deep Pool. On the dark old street, the street lights were as sparse as an old lady's teeth. Jialuo ran through the closed shops, taking a shortcut with great expectation, hoping to see Soo-kyung-hun this morning. Jialuo's heart was beating fast, and his face was full of smiles without any deliberate effort. He looked in the direction of the cake shop, imagining Soo-kyung-hun's appearance when she suddenly saw him, and felt a little happy and proud. In the flickering fireworks, Jialuo waved his arms, wanting her to see him earlier. Just like a couple who had not seen each other for a long time in the train station, he waved his arms, not to say hello, but to let her know that he was here. However, when Jialuo's sight really appeared in the spring cake shop, the smile on his face suddenly froze, and then the smile slowly dissipated, the waving hand slowly put down, and the running pace slowly turned into walking. There was nothing there. There were no lights, no Soo-kyung-hun, and no cake shop. I'm not kidding, nor am I trying to emphasize the situation. In front of Jialuo, there was literally nothing. Where's the cake shop? Jialuo was like being poured with a basin of ice water from head to toe. His previous excitement and expectation disappeared in an instant and turned into confusion and panic. How happy Jialuo was just now, how uneasy he was now. What happened? Where's the cake shop? Where's Soo-kyung-hun? Who is it? Is it Zinki Bio-pharmaceuticals? Tangzhujian? Jialuo stood at the original location of the cake shop, his hands trembling uncontrollably. He was not angry, he was panicked, and had no idea. He didn't even know how to think, let alone what to do. Soo-kyung-hun. Soo-kyung-hun. Jialuo shouted Soo-kyung-hun's name loudly, but he didn't get any answer. Jialuo seemed to fall from a cliff, and directly into a deep pool. All he saw was darkness, and the rest of his feeling was full of coldness. In a trance, a gust of cold wind blew, and Jialuo trembled with horror. He looked up, and saw snowflakes flying down from the sky. As promised, it snowed on Christmas Eve. Jialuo took a deep breath and slowly calmed down. He took out his cell phone and dialed Soo-kyung-hun's number with trembling fingers. Beep beep beep, the call was connected, but no one answered. Jialuo waited until the announcer's voice sounded, before hanging up the phone and dialing again. After 3 times in a row, Jialuo finally confirmed helplessly that Soo-kyung-hun's phone was no longer dialable. It's okay, it's okay. Soo-kyung-hun has death return, she must not. Jialuo muttered to try to comfort himself, but halfway through the words, he froze in place. At noon, he and Soo-kyung-hun came into contact. He took away her innate ability, and now Soo-kyung-hun can't die return happiness. If she dies, she will really die. He may lose her forever. Jialuo opened his mouth, but suddenly couldn't say a word. He didn't know what happened, and he didn't know what to do, but he was sure that if Soo-kyung-hun died, the murderer would not be anyone but him. Because he took away Soo-kyung-hun's ability to survive, but he didn't tell her. Soo-kyung-hun might have been killed by someone, or she might have chosen to commit suicide in a critical moment. In short, in her impression, she didn't need to worry about death at all. Death was just a rebirth for her. But now, it's not the case, but she doesn't know. No, it won't be so coincidental. Don't think of the worst. Jialuo rubbed his cheeks with both hands, forcing himself to calm down. Things might not be so bad. He couldn't think about it, but had to analyze the situation in front of him. The current situation is that Su King-hun disappeared, and the cake shop was gone. GLUO didn't know the reason and situation of Su King-hun's disappearance, but such a big cake shop, even if it was wiped out by an evolver with his ability, there must be traces. What's more, the cake shop was not wiped out by the power. The scattered traces on the ground were obvious. There were bulldozers passing by here. So, the cake shop was flattened by a bulldozer? In order to be thorough, the other party also transported away all the bricks and stones of the ruins. GLUO's forehead was full of sweat in the cold wind of the snow. He squatted down and carefully checked the tire marks on the ground. Finally, he could confirm that at least one bulldozer and 2 muck trucks had been here. This is not blatant, this is arrogance, this is revenge, and also a deliberate display of strength. Obviously, it was the gang of hooligans who demolished the cake shop. Only they would deliberately demolish the cake shop and clear the land, leaving it empty here. Demolition, 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 and relocation. The other party did it thoroughly enough. It's not zinky bio-pharmaceuticals. That's good. That's good. GLUO confirmed the culprit of the cake shop's move, and he felt relieved. As long as it had nothing to do with the evolver, Su King-hun would definitely be fine. Don't look at her weak and frail, but she is stronger than GLUO in both physical and combat abilities. If she faces ordinary people, she is even more unparalleled, and even a gun is useless. Tang Zujian has been studying things related to the evolvers, and he has been doing things in secret. It is impossible for him to have such a bad impact. GLUO was analyzing and comforting himself. He could be said to be praying now. The gangsters should just do the demolition, but don't mix the things of the evolvers. I can't confirm Su King-hun's situation now. The only clue at the moment is the gangsters who are doing the demolition. GLUO had a clue, and his mind was much clearer. Although he met a lot of gangsters, they didn't have much intersection. At present, the most likely ones are only 2 groups of people. The first group is the Mengwu that GLUO met when he was interviewing for a bar security guard before. There was a conflict at that time. In addition, the 3 gangsters who threw Su King-hun's cake to the ground that day and were forced to eat it up by GLUO were his men. The second group was the gangsters that GLUO beat up under the influence of alcohol when GLUO and Su King-hun went to the hot pot restaurant for dinner. At that time, GLUO wanted to make himself feel guilty, so he deliberately created a scene of injury. At that time, that group of people were considered victims. They must hate GLUO very much, and revenge will come sooner or later. These 2 groups are both groups engaged in demolition in the old neighborhood, but they target different areas. One is this commercial street, and the other is the residential area. In terms of profit, it is definitely more profitable on the shopping street, but since Mengwu can hold this area, it means that he has greater power, or the people behind him may be more powerful. With this analysis, the result is very obvious. Although both groups of gangsters are engaged in demolition and both have the motive to retaliate against GLUO, there is no doubt that Mengwu is the only one who has the motive and ability to make such a big scene on this road in the old street. If she dies, all the people involved today will not be able to survive. Chapter 54, Countdown. Frosty snowflakes were flying all over the sky. GLUO stood on the empty street, looking up at the increasingly heavy snowstorm. There was not much expression on his face, and the whole person was as gloomy as a deep pool. After all the clues were clear, GLUO finally calmed down. He took out his mobile phone and took pictures of the clues around him. Finally, before putting away his mobile phone, GLUO took a deep look at the time. 1919 on December 24th, 3005. Before leaving, GLUO took another turn nearby. After confirming that there were no omissions and new clues, he started to walk home. Yes, GLUO's first plan now is to go home first. Although the probability is not high, if Su King-hun returns home safely, and he is still making trouble outside, that would really be courting death. On the way back, everything was the same as before. The closed shops were still not demolished, and the small shops that were still open were half dead. No one came to the whole street at night. Those hooligans are just like street cleaners. This street must have been very prosperous in the past. It's not surprising that there is a night market in such a good location, but now, everything is gone. Christmas Eve, although it was an uneasy night, snow fell as expected. GLUO was as silent as a bronze statue under the goose feather-like snow. At the gate of the community, the indifferent security guard had already gone off work. The first few street lights were all broken. It was scary to walk on the road. In this dark situation, it would not be surprising if someone suddenly jumped out from behind and hit him with a club. All this did not affect GLUO's pace. He hurriedly ran into the entrance of the rented building, rushed to the door of his house into steps, and then, dong dong dong, knocked on Soo King-han's door. "Soo King-han, are you there? Are you there?" GLUO knocked on the door for a long time, but no one responded as expected. GLUO lay on the door and checked around, but he did not find a way to open the door easily. Although Soo King-han rented a house in a dilapidated neighborhood, her security door was deliberately replaced, and there was probably a trap inside. GLUO rushed in rashly, which was basically courting death. She should not have come back, since she left in the morning. GLUO checked the footprints at the door again, and finally found in despair that all the clues related to Soo King-han had been cut off. GLUO opened the door of his house in a daze, and turned off the fire of the steamed fish. Then he sat down at the table, looking at the table full of food that he had carefully prepared, and felt unexpectedly uncomfortable. If I can't find Soo King-han, I can only find Meng-woo. If I can't find Meng-woo, I can only find the bar manager who knows him. GLUO slowly smiled, and his smile was very bitter, and also revealed a hint of madness. His perfect Christmas Eve and perfect Christmas were ruined by a group of idiots. They didn't know at all that they had been jumping back and forth on the edge of courting death. Now, they finally crossed the line. GLUO took out his cell phone, and with the help of the kitchen light, he flipped through the photos he had just taken. After reading them, GLUO turned on the alarm on his cell phone and silently set a time. 1 o'clock on December 25th, 3005. GLUO seized Soo King-han's death return at about 1:20 p.m. and returned it 12 hours later, which happened to be Christmas. A little after 1 o'clock in the morning. Therefore, when this alarm rings, if GLUO still can't find Soo King-han's trace, or he has confirmed that she is in trouble, then he must go back anyway. In other words, as long as GLUO cannot be sure that Soo King-han is safe and sound, he will choose to die and activate death return. This time is GLUO's countdown to death, and it is also an ultimatum to everyone. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle bells, how happy we are skiing. We are sitting on a sleigh in the empty house. GLUO sang Christmas songs in a weird tone. He turned over the closet and changed into dark clothes. Then, GLUO took out his travel backpack and put several knives, hemostatic agents, bandages, anonymous phone cards, spare clothes, simple Macute boxes, etc. How do I feel? Like I'm going on a trip. GLUO looked at himself in the mirror with his backpack on his back, then pulled down his hood to cover half of his face. After making sure that his appearance would not be clearly captured by the camera, GLUO put on thin gloves, picked up the more than 1 meter long steel pipe behind the door, and pushed the door open and walked out. Although the community where GLUO lives is very old, there are still surveillance cameras in some places. However, GLUO had stepped on the spot early, so there was no need to go far. GLUO easily avoided the surveillance area, and finally climbed over the wall to leave the community, quietly getting into the darkness. Now, the time is about to reach 8 o'clock in the evening, and there are still 5 hours until 1 o'clock in the middle of the night. Time is very tight, and there are many things to do. GLUO has no other choice. He can only take the fastest shortcut. The sky is blue, and there are thousands of paper cranes outside the door. GLUO sat in the back seat of the taxi, looking at the light and shadow outside the window, and suddenly his cheeks felt cold. The world is so big and the city is so prosperous, but almost everyone has a home to go back to, and there are people waiting for them. Those people have hope, expectation, and persistence. No matter what happens, they can cry and go back to their parents after being bruised and battered. But GLUO has none of this. He has nothing. In this world, GLUO has always been alone. Alone. No one has expectations of him, and he never has expectations of others. He is just himself. He lives and dies by himself. For so many years, GLUO has come here alone. He no longer cares about his life and death. The reason why he has been insisting is probably because of his stubbornness. I don't believe that I can't find other evolvers in this life. Later, GLUO's dream came true. Stubbornness brought hope. He met Sukinghan and other evolvers and successfully activated his superpowers. You see, everything is so beautiful. GLUO wanted to get closer to the world of evolvers with vigilance, curiosity, and desire. He tried his best to get close to Sukinghan, thinking that he could treat her as a tool and throw her away after licking her. However, GLUO didn't expect that. He miscalculated and fell into it. Sukinghan is so beautiful. Although she has a cold personality, she is actually very considerate. The most terrifying thing is that she is lonely like GLUO. The thinking circuits and behavior patterns of the two are the same. After contact, it feels like a soul fit. So, GLUO likes her, really likes her. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. Goodbye. Regardless of the evolver or superpowers, who wouldn't love an 18-year-old girl who is young, beautiful, sensible, and lovely? Men are always loyal. Whether they are 30 or 50 years old, their feelings for 18-year-old girls will not change. GLUO is 24 years old this year. Is there anything wrong with him falling in love with Sukinghan? Because there is nothing wrong. After the initial uneasiness of conscience, GLUO became righteous and licked her more and more blatantly. But suddenly, his wife who had been licked with saliva disappeared, and it might even be smashed by someone else. He has been single for 24 years, and finally met a suitable girl. Is it easy for him? He used to be such a cold person, but now he works hard for Sukinghan and cooks for her more seriously than for himself. It's really hard for him. After wandering for so long, GLUO finally found someone who fits in with him. He even experienced the feeling of being a family with her. Really? Until this moment, GLUO closed his eyes. He could still feel it in a fantasy. He was lying on the bed half asleep and half awake. Sukinghan was cooking for him in the kitchen. The aroma of the food drifted over. There was an inexplicable warmth and stability. Such a good wife. If she died, would there be a girl like her in the world? No, never again. So, even if he risked his life, even if he was covered in blood, even if he had committed many sins, he would save her. Whoever wants her dead, I will kill him. At worst, we will go to hell together. Ever since he saw the cake shop disappear and Sukinghan disappear, GLUO had always had a rage in his heart, a rage towards the world. He had been trembling with fear for 10 years and had never done anything that was beyond his control. Why did he end up like this? Sukinghan, why did he end up like this? GLUO took a deep breath and wiped the tears from his cheeks with his hands. The taxi driver looked at GLUO in the rearview mirror and sighed helplessly. Young man, let's break up. She is not worthy of you. You will always meet the right person. Young man, don't be sad. I see you are carrying a backpack. Did you take the train from another place to see your girlfriend? Yeah. GLUO nodded and was amused by the taxi driver's inner thoughts. He probably thought that GLUO came all the way to see his girlfriend, but found out that he was cheated on Christmas Eve, and now he is crying and going to the bar to drown his sorrows. It's okay. If the old doesn't go, the new won't come. Go to the bar to have fun. You will take the train tomorrow and go back. The taxi driver showed a smile of on his face, changed gears flexibly, slowed down the speed, and stopped at the intersection beside the bar. We are here, young man. Listen to me and go home tomorrow. Yes, I'll go back tomorrow. GLUO nodded with a smile and handed the fare to the driver. He stood at the intersection, watching the taxi go away, and then slowly pulled out the steel pipe wrapped in newspaper. There are still good people in this world. GLUO pulled down his hood, looked up at the heavy snow in the sky, exhaled a puff of white air, and felt unexpectedly relaxed. If you were allowed to start over, would you love me? Love brings happiness to people, but also brings torture. GLUO sang a song and walked alone on the road. He was wearing all black, with a big bag on his back. He held a more than 1 meter long steel pipe in his hand and dragged it lazily on the ground, leaving a long mark. Under the darkness and amidst the noise, the nightclub on Christmas Eve was even more lively. Small groups of 2s and 3s came and went at the door of the bar. GLUO's strange appearance naturally attracted a lot of attention, but GLUO didn't care and just walked straight to the door of the bar. The 2 waiters at the door of the bar were the first group of people to notice GLUO. Bars are places with all kinds of customers. Many people cannot be received, so they must be paid attention to. The effect of putting security guards is very poor, so there are usually 2 waiters. Without the slightest hesitation, the bar waiter directly notified the security guard through the intercom, but GLUO walked very fast. The security guard just replied when GLUO was close to the steps. People around him had already felt that something was wrong. The guests near the bar stopped and watched from a distance. The guests walking out of the bar also retreated. No one dared to get close to GLUO, who was carrying a steel pipe. This guest, please wait a moment. The bartender was also very afraid of GLUO, but he had to stop him. So at this time, a funny scene came. GLUO had just stepped on the first step, and the waiter at the top asked him to wait a moment. GLUO continued to walk up, and he quietly stepped back. I'm looking for your manager. The manager, surnamed Key. I want to find him and ask about the whereabouts of my girlfriend. GLUO walked up the steps slowly, step by step. His voice was not loud, but it was very clear. When the waiter heard GLUO's words, he was stunned at the time. Obviously, he thought that manager Key had cheated on GLUO, and GLUO was coming to the door. Wait a moment, I'll go find him right away. The waiter was very cunning. As soon as he saw GLUO's posture, he knew that there might be a fight. He turned around and ran into the bar, calling on the intercom while running. Wait a moment. He went to hand it in. The waiter on the other side was confused at this time. How come there were only 2 people just now, and suddenly he was the only one left? The door was full of guests, all watching here, and he had to stop him. But how could he dare to stop him? He was walking up with a steel pipe, and his momentum was like he was going to kill someone. Stop. What are you doing? Fortunately, at this time, the security guards of the bar finally came over. I don't know if it was because of GLUO's trouble, but there were 4 security guards this time, and they all had a fierce aura, obviously fighting often. However, GLUO ignored these people. He just walked up the steps and walked in from the main entrance of the bar. The only remaining waiter had already hidden in it. The bar's field security was mainly responsible for the parking lot. Although they ran over quickly, they surrounded GLUO from behind. They were not the kind of people who hesitated. Seeing that GLUO did not stop, they took the initiative to grab the steel pipe in GLUO's hand. I told you to stop. The security guard himself probably didn't expect that the other party didn't even dodge, and he let him grab the weapon. As soon as he stretched out his hand, he saw that GLUO was not very strong, so he didn't worry at all. He grabbed the steel pipe with one hand and GLUO's shoulder with the other hand, intending to pull him out directly from the door of the bar. However, he used all his strength, but the steel pipe didn't move at all, as if it was sealed into the concrete ground. GLUO, who was a head shorter than him, didn't even use any strength. He just struggled with his shoulders, and his clenched hands loosened. Chapter 56. Rational Choice. Get out of the way. I'm looking for someone. In front of GLUO was a brightly lit entertainment venue, and behind him was a snowy night. He broke free from the hand on his shoulder and let the security guard grab the steel pipe in his right hand. He stepped forward like a plowing ox. Wait outside to find someone. I'll call you. The security guard closest to GLUO had already noticed that something was wrong, and his tone had softened. He no longer tried to catch GLUO, but grabbed the steel pipe with both hands. It was okay to let the person in, but the steel pipe had to be snatched away. The 3 security guards who were walking behind also rushed over at this time. Seeing that GLUO had no intention of hurting anyone, they did not hit him, but tried to grab GLUO everywhere and control him first. Get out of the way. GLUO finally felt annoyed with the 4 people behind him. He pushed back with his left hand, and the 3 people who rushed over fell to the ground like waves. Then GLUO exerted force with his right hand, and the steel pipe was pulled out of the security guard's clenched hands. Because of the rapid friction of the steel pipe, the skin on the surface of the security guard's palm was torn, and he fell forward. Seeing GLUO moving forward slowly, he didn't have the courage to get up immediately for a while. Brother Cairo, are you okay? Seeing their companion injured, the other 3 people hurriedly got up from the ground and helped Cairo Janian up. It was still snowing late at night. Who would be willing to be a security guard outside at night? It was because they were the 4 newcomers and were assigned the worst position. It's okay, it's nothing serious. Cairo Janian spread his hands and was still shaking. Now he regretted why he had held the steel pipe so hard just now, causing the skin on both hands to be torn off. The other 3 people saw that Cairo Janian was fine, and they were relieved. At this time, GLUO had already walked into the bar hall, taking money from others to help them get rid of disasters. The 3 people were about to rush over to take action, but were stopped by Cairo Janian. Don't go over there. What's wrong, Brother Cairo? The 4 of them came together to be security guards, and they were planning to work hard to earn a high salary. If they don't work now, they might lose everything. Tell Manager Wang on the intercom to call the police. Cairo Janian reached into his pocket and took out the intercom. He grimaced in pain because of the injury on his palm. He threw the intercom to his companion, motioning him to notify him quickly. Brother, we are from the same village, and I won't lie to you. The person today is not right, and I'm afraid something big is going to happen. I won't go in through this door, and I won't care if you go in. When Cairo Janian thinks about it now, he still can't help but feel palpitations in his heart. It was Christmas Eve, snowing late at night, and he carried a steel pipe into the bar. According to the plot of the novel, this was either catching an adulterer or a murder of passion. Brother Cairo, we've only been working here for more than a week, and now he's running away, but we don't have any salary. Few of the people who come to work as bar security guards are not short of money, especially these bars near the old street, which are a mixture of black and grey. When they fight among themselves, they are much more cruel than to ordinary people. Trust me, don't get involved. This man is here to kill people. Cairo Janian had seen people killing people in his early years. When people are really angry, they are very silent, neither shouting nor yelling. People in this situation come here to kill people, not to vent their anger or take revenge. Moreover, there is something Cairo Janian did not tell these 3 people. Just now, when he saw this person, he inexplicably thought of Lin Chang's Fengsu Mountain Temple. People in this situation will kill people when they are desperate. Brother Cairo, let's. Cairo Janian was the leader of the 4 people, but the other 3 were also short of money, and the small group had disagreements. Someone was about to persuade Cairo Janian, but he didn't expect that before he finished speaking, there was a loud noise in the bar. Something big happened. Cairo Janian and his 3 companions looked at each other and started to walk in together. Cairo Janian was not going to do this job, but he wanted to see the situation and call the police if something happened. Cairo Janian did not dare to tell his companions about his fear. How much strength would it take to pull out such a smooth steel pipe and tear the skin of the palm of the hand? Cairo Janian had practiced Sanda for a few years. He could become the core of the small group because he dared to fight and was good at fighting. But the man they met now was not the ruthless man in their impression. To put it bluntly, after killing people, this kind of people will not do it twice. Kill 2 and earn a pair, kill 10 and earn a bundle. No one can stop them at that time, and they have to call the police because they have guns. What's going on? What happened? What's the loud noise? As soon as Cairo Janian walked into the bar hall, he could only hear chaotic noises. Cairo Janian did not care too much and jumped onto the table directly. He looked around, trying to find the figure. Boom. There was another deafening sound, and the large speakers embedded in the wall of the bar were directly broken. The music that had been surrounding him also stopped at this time. Who is this? What is he going to do? Will Head Eyes come to mess up the place? In the surprised eyes of everyone, a figure dressed in black, with a hood and a backpack, like a homeless man, walked onto the stage carrying a steel pipe. What do you do? The resident singer of the bar is a good-looking girl. She turned her head to look at the figure walking up, and her voice spread throughout the hall through the microphone. Looking for someone. The figure, whose face could not be seen, clearly spoke in a low voice, but everyone could hear it through the microphone. He was still covered in snow as he walked step by step to the center of the stage. The bar singer had already retreated far away. He is not very old. Judging from his body shape and voice, he is under 25 years old. Kyojanian took out his mobile phone and pressed the emergency number, but he did not dial it immediately. He wanted to see the specific situation before deciding what to do. Brother Kyo, the manager is calling on the intercom. Ignore him and don't answer him yet. Kyojanian has always believed in his own feelings. What happened tonight will never end well. The new manager is a relative of the boss. He is ugly in both doing things and eating. He probably never thought of calling the police, but wanted to rely on a few security guards to suppress the matter. He's still scolding us newcomers for not taking care of things. I would like to see how much more their old people will take care of things. Kyojanian was very angry when he heard the manager scolding on the intercom. This guy had just drunk before work and his brain was not working well. He didn't motivate the team and was still scolding. What an idiot. Kyojanian had no hope for this job. He felt that what happened tonight would be a big fuss and the bar might not be able to operate. As if to confirm Kyojanian's guess, at this time, the figure on the stage picked up the microphone, and the hood blocked half of his face, and only his chin without a beard could be seen. That's it for tonight. Let's go home. Chapter 57. The Murder. Everyone wants to be safe and sound on Christmas Eve. I want to be safe too, but there's nothing I can do. If I'm not safe, then neither can anyone else. At this time, the young man's voice sounded quite nice. Compared to his behavior, he seemed quite rational, without any hysteria of murderous love affair. Those who have already paid, take your drinks, and go to other bars or roadside stalls. Those who haven't paid, just hurry up, and take your things and run. You made a profit, don't thank me, I'm Lei Hefeng. As if he had finished what he wanted to say, the figure on the stage plugged the microphone back into the booth and picked up the steel pipe beside him. Oh, pretty handsome, buddy. Handsome guy, are you trying to rob the rich and give to the poor? No money, can I get some more? People who come to the bar to drink are all here to have fun. When they encounter such a scene, they must be shocked at first, but now it seems that the other party does not seem to have the intention of hurting others, so isn't it a good show to watch? Many people whistled, and some people felt the danger and started to walk back with their companions. Some people even wanted to move forward, but no matter what, the space under the stage was empty. It was not until this time that the security guards in the bar finally squeezed through the crowd and rushed to the front of the stage. What do you want to do? 7 or 8 security guards carrying rubber sticks began to rush to the stage. Last month, 4 dedicated teammates were hospitalized. Now everyone is very careful. When something happens, they will wait until there are more people before rushing forward. Hey, do you think I'm joking with you? On the stage, the voice of the figure suddenly became cold. He twisted his neck, moved his body forward, held the steel pipe with both hands, and swung it violently. No one thought that the figure would be so cruel. The front security guard had just stood on the stage, and the steel pipe with the sound of wind had already fallen on his arm. Just like a heavy axe chopping on a dead tree trunk, the scene and the sound were inexplicably crisp. The security guard let out a huge scream and fell backwards. His arm was broken like a broken branch. The bones were shattered, the flesh split from half, revealing the red bone stumps, and the blood spurted out like a spring, spreading over a wide area. At this moment, without anyone whistling or joking, the atmosphere was as suffocating and silent for a moment, and then, many women made shrill screams. However, everything did not affect the figure on the stage. He looked like he had just swung a baseball bat and hit a good ball, with a cold smile on his face. Without hesitation or stopping, the figure pulled the steel pipe in his hand, leaned back, and then stabbed forward suddenly, an extremely standard Zhangping gun. Zonping gun, the king of guns. The middle point is the most difficult to defend. The gun pierces a line, and the momentum is as fast as an arrow. The security guard who was chosen as the target had almost no room to react. The steel pipe obviously had no gun head, but under the huge kinetic energy, it instantly penetrated his chest. Get up. Then, the figure on the stage, like a performance, held the short remaining part of the steel pipe, lifted the person up directly, and then thrown him out heavily. The human body, that was directly penetrated from front to back, had 2 transparent holes, and the blood flow was extremely scary. The remaining 4 or 5 security guards no longer dared to step forward, and all avoided it from a distance. Seeing such a horrible scene, the men and women in the bar finally went crazy and ran out, like they were fighting for their lives. Kyo Junian looked at everything in front of him in silence. He clutched his mobile phone and wanted to call the police several times, but he didn't call out after all. At this time, the 3 companions around Kyo Junian were not just persuading him to stop the man. They all pulled Kyo Junian to let him run, but who knew that at this time, Kyo Junian shook his head and didn't leave. Just now, Kyo Junian didn't even want to go in. He just wanted to call the police and leave immediately, but at this time, the man had clearly hurt someone, but he didn't leave. He doesn't want to kill anyone now, or the person he wants to kill is not here. Kyo Junian is a very rational and crazy person. Rationality means that he will calculate the gains and losses at any time, and choose the best answer for himself. Crazy means that Kyo Junian often gambles, and for huge benefits. He doesn't mind taking risks, especially when the rewards are huge. Don't worry, it's okay. This guy is very strong. If he wanted to kill someone, when he first swung the steel pipe, he didn't aim at the arm and just hit the torso at that position. The first person would be dead. He must have practiced shooting. That shot was very beautiful, so beautiful that it can only be described as wonderful. Look at the location of the man's wound. No internal organs were injured. To put it bluntly, it was just a flesh wound. It looks scary, but it won't kill anyone. He said when he came in that he was looking for someone. I thought he was here to take revenge on someone in the bar, but now it seems that I was wrong. This person is indeed here to find someone, but the person he is looking for is not here. He wants to find that person through the manager of the bar. Kyo Junian spoke very quickly, so quickly that he felt anxious, but the 3 people next to him didn't actually ask him anything. The reason why Kyo Junian said so much was probably not to explain to his companions, but to try to convince himself and strengthen his courage. In order to choose to take risks, to fight for greater benefits. At least, even if it's just to know such a powerful person, it's a gain. After all, this is also a kind of resource. Kyo Junian did not say the latter part of this sentence. He jumped down from the table and let the swarm of men and women leave him. The 3 companions who had been standing beside him also wanted to leave at this time, but Kyo Junian had no intention of leaving. The 3 thought about Kyo Junian's usual correctness, hesitated for a moment, and finally stayed with him. On the stage, the figure once again held the microphone. Last time, there was a crowd of revelers in front of him, but this time, there were only 11 security guards left, and some were standing, and some were lying. Now that all the outsiders have left, go and call your manager over. Hey, why are you all standing there like an idiot? Go and call him. No one dares to go? Ha, you're such a big man, and you still want me to call out names. The murderer seemed to be putting pressure on everyone present. He swept his eyes around, and almost no one looked at him, except Kyo Junian, the security guard who grabbed my shoulder. You're looking at me like that. Do you want to go? I can go. Kyo Junian took a step forward, ignoring his companion's attempts to stop him. He was far away from the stage, and couldn't actually look the assailant in the eye, but he never looked away. Okay, then go ahead. As if he didn't understand the meaning of Kyo Junian's words, the figure didn't continue the topic, but insisted on seeing the manager. Chapter 58, Guide Party. Okay. Kyo Junian paused for a moment, then nodded heavily. When he turned around, he winked at the other 3 companions, and asked them to follow him. On the stage, a fierce figure pulled the stool next to him, and came down very indifferently. A few meters in front of him, the 2 injured people screamed. The security guards gathered together. Someone wanted to use his mobile phone to call the emergency number, but a murderous look immediately turned to him. Even without him threatening, everyone kicked up their mobile phones and stood there timidly, looking like prisoners waiting for trial. Kyo-Junian was probably the only one who had his own ideas among all the people present. He didn't even look at the injured on the ground and directly took his 3 companions to the second floor of the bar. "Brother Kyo, what do you want to do?" The 3 young men following Kyo-Junian were so scared that their legs were a little weak when they followed him to leave. Now that they were on the second floor, they had the courage to speak. "What I want to do." Kyo-Junian had a thoughtful expression on his face at this time. He had just volunteered to go to the manager because he actually had something to say to that person. He had roughly guessed the purpose of this person, so he wanted to express his sincerity. He could help him. He was a very useful person, and everyone could cooperate. Brother Kyo, what do you want to do?" "Do something big." Kyo-Junian licked his lips, and his ambitions in his heart grew bigger and bigger like fire. He wanted to make money. He wanted to make a lot of money. Being a security guard in a bar, he only made a few thousand yuan a month, and he was also laughed at as a watchdog. No one looked at him straight in the eye when he came and went. People live by their faces, and trees live by their skins. He was actually a person with a strong self-esteem, but now he just came out to work. There was no way. He needed money, so he had to endure it. But now, Kyo-Junian saw an opportunity. This person dared to run around the bar and beat people up so unscrupulously. His idea was definitely tough. Kyo-Junian's current idea is to take it one step at a time. It doesn't matter if he is the other party's younger brother, but in short, he must show his value and let the other party recognize him so that the 2 sides can slowly get in touch. In this society, knowing a very powerful person is also a resource. Anyway, we didn't do anything. Even if we get nothing, it's not a loss. Kyo-Junian walked in the luxuriously decorated second floor, and his mood was completely different from before. He had heard that the owner of this bar was originally a gangster who worked as a thug. He dared to fight and dared to kill. He settled a lot of things for the boss and slowly got up. After making enough money, the man turned to whitewashing and started to run some nightclubs and supermarkets. Now he is also a well-known figure in Changlin City. It is said that he almost became a listed representative last year. A real man should be like this, and I can do the same. Remember, we have a unified caliber. No matter how the police ask in the future, we will say that we were scared at the time and forced to find the manager. The expression on Kyo-Junian's face changed. The 3 companions who had known him for several years followed him and were scared for a while. "Brother Kyo, let's run now. He will definitely not come looking for us." "No, I won't leave. You can leave if you want. I want to try my luck, a big one." Kyo-Junian had already walked to the door of the manager's office at this time. He stopped and turned to look at his 3 companions with a fierce look. "Do you remember the topic we talked about before applying for the bar security? If we come from the village, we must be ruthless enough to stand out. We must be ruthless to others and ourselves. Otherwise, we will be uneducated and brainless and will never make a lot of money in our lifetime." Kyo-Junian and the other 4 were so short of money that they were jealous. Otherwise, who would do this kind of work? They had discussed it before. In order to make money, they must dare to fight. Hearing Kyo-Junian's words, the 3 of them fell silent, and Kyo-Junian did not ask any more questions. He took it as their tacit agreement and kicked the door of the manager's office open without mercy. "Hello, sister, something happened here. What should I do? Should I call my brother-in-law?" On the sofa, the drunk manager was already at a loss. He didn't even dare to call the bar owner directly. The sound of Kyo-Junian kicking the door scared him, and he didn't even listen to the reply from the other end of the phone. "What are you doing?" The new manager of the bar looked up and saw that Kyo-Junian's face was not right. He immediately panicked, but before he could think of a solution, Kyo-Junian suddenly rushed in front of him and punched him in the face. Kyo-Junian's punch was so fierce that the drunk manager was stunned. The phone in his hand fell to the ground. He could vaguely hear what the person on the other end of the phone was asking. Kyo-Junian picked up the phone and hung up the call directly. Then he pressed the power button to turn off the phone. Manager Wang, I'm sorry, I was forced to do this. Kyo Junian grabbed Manager Wang's collar with both hands and pulled him up. Although he was very polite in his words, his actions were not polite at all. He pushed him forward and pushed him into the arms of his companions, letting two people hold him up. Let's go and report. Kyo Junian turned his head to look at the street that was dyed white by the snow. The crowd who had just reveled had already run away. It was very likely that some of them had called the police, so he had to move quickly. Don't dawdle, move quickly. Kyo Junian put the manager's mobile phone in his pocket, then waved his hand and started walking downstairs with his three companions. In order to ensure his own safety, Kyo Junian kept deducing this person's plan in his mind, trying to stand in a safe position. In theory, this person really came to find the manager, and he didn't need to make such a big scene. He just injured a security guard, put a knife on his neck, and went up to the second floor. He would definitely find the manager. But why did this person choose the most troublesome scene? In full view of everyone, he smashed a man's arm into pieces, stabbed another man's chest, scared away all the customers, and then did not allow them to call an ambulance. He put on a scene of execution and brought the manager over. What if all this was intentional? Kyo Junian understood a little bit about what was going on. This man might have been forced by something. He was very anxious. So he put on this scene, either to let the manager take him to find his target, or let his target bring people to save the situation. Obviously, this man's target is definitely lower in status than the bar owner, and he may even be afraid of the bar owner. Therefore, if the bar owner suffers huge losses because of him, he must come over and settle the matter. After all, the bar owner was unprovoked, and he had to bear the consequences of what others did, so he must give an explanation. What if I lead the way for him? Chapter 59. Deal done. Kyo Junian is now like a person who has fallen into a well. He has a strong sense of self-esteem and does not want to ask anyone to pull him up. However, the water in the well is too cold and he cannot bear it, so he wants to ask passers-by to pull him up. However, even if he pulls himself down and begs, no one is willing to help him. It is clear that he can go up and get up just by pulling the rope. But it is just a matter of a rope, but no one helps him. Now, Kyo Junian has been driven crazy by the life at the bottom of the well. He wants to climb up at all costs. As long as there is a chance, no matter what cruel things he does, Kyo Junian will not hesitate. The person is brought here. Kyo Junian walked in front. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Manager Wang's collar and took him from his two companions. Then he took 2 steps forward and threw the manager under the stage with force. Is this your manager? Yes, Wang Xiaochun, our manager. Kyo Junian listened to what this person said and had a bottom line in his heart. He came to find the original manager. This Wang Xiaochun could not solve his problem. What if he solved it? Where is the manager named Qi? He made a mistake and was kicked out by the boss. He might have known the phone number. Kyo Junian gestured to Wang Xiaochun on the ground, hinting that he could do it for him. At this time, it was not known whether Wang Xiaochun was too bad or Kyo Junian's punch was too fierce, but Manager Wang was lying on the ground, still covered. He's gone. It's not unfair. What's your name? Kyo Junian. Kyo for Archbridge, Jun for horse, Nyan for earring. Kyo Junian introduced himself very clearly, as if he wanted to give the other party enough impression. The figure on the stage still couldn't see his face clearly, but his eyes were on Kyo Junian's face. Do you know Meng Wu? Yes, Master Meng Wu. He's very popular in this area. Kyo Junian specifically asked someone to find out about this, and answered quickly without thinking. How did you know? I was short of money, and I wanted to go out and hang out at first, so I learned a little bit. Then why didn't you go? Because they don't lack people, and things like demolition don't require people who can fight. Kyo Junian knew that the other party was judging his value, so he didn't hesitate and told everything directly. The most important thing is that they are doing some pickled things in demolition. After they are done, they look down on themselves, so they just give them money to get rid of dogs. You are very ambitious. Where do you want to go? the figure on the stage finally became interested in Kao Janian. He tapped the steel pipe in his hand on the ground twice, and the blood stains on the ground were spotted. I want money. How much? The more the better. For money, how far are you willing to go? Except for life, anything. When Kao Janian said this, his teeth were about to break. He swore that he would become a rich man in this life and let those people see it. Then, Kao Janian, let's make a deal. Now, I don't care what method you use, take me to see Meng Wu, and I'll give you 30,000 yuan. Just go to see him? Just go to see him. You don't need to get involved in anything, but it has to be fast. The faster the better. If you are slow, you will have to pay the price of delaying my business. On the stage, the man pointed at the two security guards who were half dead on the ground. There was no threat in his words, but he was stating a matter of fact. Okay. Kao Janian chose to accept without hesitation. Just lead the way, and he would give 30,000 yuan. This deal is not a loss. What's more, with contact, he can deepen his impression of this person. If he can really get in touch with him, he will make too much money. Then do your best, as if he really believed that Kao Janian could do it. The figure on the stage lowered his head and seemed to close his eyes and take a nap. Obviously, he should be very anxious, but strangely, at this time, he didn't seem so anxious. Kao Janian did not hesitate at this time. He took out Wang Xiaochuan's mobile phone from his pocket, turned it on, and then walked to him and unlocked the phone with his fingerprint. Then, Kao Janian rummaged through Wang Xiaochuan's pockets and took out the car keys. Kao Janian looked through Wang Xiaochuan's address book, walked to his companion, and handed him the car keys. You know which car Wang Xiaochuan owns, right? Go drive it now, and park it at the door. Okay. After all, he had known Kao Janian for a long time, so he took the keys and walked out without any nonsense. On the contrary, the other two people looked at Kao Janian and asked him with their eyes if he really wanted to do it. Kao Janian nodded silently, and then he used Wang Xiaochuan's chat account to tentatively send messages to several people. Some of these messages directly asked for Meng Wu's address, some asked indirectly, and some asked questions. Almost within a few minutes, the replies from these people arrived, and all the addresses overlapped very much, all pointing to the same place. Kao Janian deleted the chat history, turned off his phone, and put it in Wang Xiaochuan's clothes. At this time, Wang Xiaochuan had almost woken up, but he was still lying on the ground like a dead pig, pretending that he knew nothing. As for the other side, the two injured security guards were no longer moving. I don't know if they fainted. Anyway, whether they can survive depends on their lives. Kao Janian has already found out Meng Wu's movements. He could have handed in his work, but he was not in a hurry. Instead, he took out his mobile phone and called a small boss he knew before. After a simple greeting, Kao Janian praised the other party. It can be said that before Kao Janian asked, in order to show his closeness to Meng Wu, the small boss pulled out the address. Beiwei's Hey, that's a great restaurant. Master Meng Wu is so generous that he actually invited so many of you to dinner. Kao Janian listened to the noisy voice on the phone, complimented a few more times, and then hung up the phone. The address is confirmed. Kao Janian put down the phone, and when he looked up again, the expression on his face had changed. It's hard to say whether this is a personal talent or not. Kao Janian can always control his emotions well, and his acting talent is quite good. Okay, I'll give you the money when I get there. If you meet Meng Wu, it's 30,000 yuan, not a penny less. If you don't meet him, you'll be in trouble. I know. Kao Janian nodded, as if he agreed to the price of the deal. Well, now, let's go. So, the figure on the stage walked down casually. He didn't even look at the person on the ground, but slowly walked through the hall and walked towards the door. Kao Janian, if you were taken advantage of, how would you feel? It would be an honor. Why? Because I can get paid and realize my own value. Okay. Chapter 60, Pointless Temptation. Under the dark night, snow fell like catkins. Kao Janian drove very steadily. Although time was urgent, he still did not exceed the speed stipulated in the regulations. In the back seat of the car, the young man who had just committed the crime leaned against the car window, holding a mobile phone in his hand, as if he was checking something. There was no light in the car, and the light of the mobile phone was cast on his face, making the only half of his face that could be seen have an inexplicable gloomy feeling. Since getting in the car, the two have never had any communication. Speaking of it, the relationship between the two is a bit strange. It can't be said to be a cooperative or dependent relationship. After all, the two had just met, and no one knew each other. They were all testing and using each other, and GLUO also gave a lot of money. But if it is regarded as a relationship of employment and being employed, then Kyojanian's position is too low. From beginning to end, he had no room for bargaining. He completely obeyed GLUO's orders and did all the crimes. But if it is regarded as a hostage or coercion, it is completely unreasonable. After all, GLUO never wanted him to do anything. Even now, he is cold to him and doesn't want to say much. On the contrary, Kyojanian has the intention of taking the initiative to serve him. Of course, everything Kyojanian did was seen by GLUO, and his thoughts were clear to GLUO. This is a very ruthless person. He is the kind of person who will never give up to achieve his goals. In order to climb up and grab more resources, he has no sense of good and evil and right and wrong, and is willing to do anything. Kyojanian's real purpose is very simple, which is to gain power and then take revenge on others. When GLUO looked at him, he could feel the fire of revenge in his heart. The most important thing is that Kyojanian is a smart person. Just like now, even though GLUO told him that he was in a hurry, he still didn't exceed the speed. Why? Speeding can indeed see Mengwu faster. But now the road is slippery due to snow, and the traffic police will come out. Speeding is likely to cause trouble and delay time. But, if they just walked steadily like this, wouldn't GLUO, who was in a hurry, be upset? Isn't Kyojanian worried that GLUO would vent his anger on him and attack him? It was just a test. Kyojanian's biggest goal was to make GLUO take the initiative to talk to him. He would listen to anything he said, but if GLUO took the initiative to talk to him, it meant that he was useful. Kyojanian was anxious, very anxious. Because before getting on the car, GLUO's last question touched his heart. Kyojanian wanted GLUO to use him, because Kyojanian made it very clear. He welcomes others to use him, but they have to give enough rewards. It doesn't have to be money, nor does it have to be physical objects. Even if GLUO recognizes his ability, it is a kind of gain. Because Kyojanian saw an opportunity in GLUO, he was like an investor, or a gambler. He was trying to place a big bet and turn over a fortune. And GLUO, of course, didn't give him the opportunity to express his feelings. GLUO was hanging him, and also enduring him. Why? Because GLUO felt that this Kyojanian might be of great use. Now, it was almost 10 o'clock, and Sukinghan's phone was still unreachable. GLUO had a feeling that she might really have been in trouble. However, Mengwu, the gangster boss, actually had no ability to cause Sukinghan to get into trouble. Now Sukinghan was not careful at all, and it was very likely that an evolver was involved. The reason why GLUO desperately looked for Mengwu was nothing more than that he was the only clue, and there was no other way, so he had to beat him up just to vent his anger. Backtracking has become inevitable. Since GLUO knew that he had to die tonight, he didn't need to care much about the next time. Going to see Mengwu was to get an answer. What was really important was what to do after the backtracking. Especially Mengwu. GLUO met him once and made him lose face and then beat his younger brother, so he naturally stood on the opposite side of his demolition. Conflict is almost inevitable, and finding a way to deal with him is what GLUO needs to consider before he dies. And this Kyojanian seems to be useful. We'll be at Beiwi's Hay soon. Mengwu entertained many of his men today. I guess there will be some big moves on the demolition side. Kyojanian seemed to be concentrating on driving, but in fact his eyes had already moved to the rear view mirror. He was reminding this person that there were many people around Mengwu today. Although he was good at fighting, he should not seek death. Isn't that just right? GLUO turned off his phone. His expression was hidden in the dim car, but there was a frivolous taste in his voice. Kyojanian maintained his caution very well. He didn't speak rashly and asked questions that he couldn't ask. At this time, the car drove into a wide street, and the hotels on both sides of the street were brightly lit. "We'll be there soon. Can you transfer the money and the phone to me?" Kyo Junian took out his phone and handed it to GLUO. He was not just for the money, he also wanted to get GLUO's contact information. Yes. GLUO transferred the money to him as he wished. Kyo Junian took back the phone, glanced at GLUO's chat account, and immediately put it back in his pocket. At this time, the destination was reached. Kyo Junian stopped the car directly on the roadside, then turned off the engine and pulled out the key. After all, it was not his car, so it didn't matter if he was fined or deducted points. Moreover, it was convenient to drive away in this position. "Do you need my help?" Kyo Junian expressed his position perfectly. In this dangerous situation, he still said that he could lend a hand, although it was under the condition that he was safe. "Okay, help me light a cigarette later." GLUO looked at Kyo Junian deeply, and his answer made Kyo Junian's heart shudder. In Kyo Junian's view, GLUO came alone, obviously prepared for something. For such a lone hero, he should say forget it. This is not to say that Kyo Junian was afraid. GLUO asked him to do something dangerous. After all, he would not do anything that endangered his life. What Kyo Junian was worried about was that his understanding of GLUO was distorted, and he could not figure out the other party's true purpose. "Okay, I'll wait behind you." Kyo Junian did not show such worries, but agreed to GLUO's request very calmly, and reiterated that he would only follow very far behind. Yeah. GLUO ignored Kyo Junian's thoughts. He pushed the door and got out of the car. The wind and snow suddenly hit his face, and the coolness made GLUO clear his mind. This is actually an alternative good weather. GLUO took off his backpack, holding the steel pipe in one hand and the backpack in the other hand, walked forward a few steps, and stepped onto the long stairs outside the hotel. The gold belt for murder and arson. GLUO looked up and looked at the tall building with bright lights and luxurious decorations in front of him. The tension, anger, and uneasiness in his heart disappeared. He was not here to uphold justice, he was just here to find someone. Chapter 61. Last class. "Hello, do you have a reservation?" There was no pretentious and face-slapping plot in the novel. The hotel waiter was very polite to GLUO. GLUO nodded and reported the name of Mengwu. The waiter seemed to understand something and led GLUO to the second floor. At this time, although Kyo Junian was following behind GLUO, the distance between the two was as much as 20 to 30 meters, and the explosion of the grenade could not affect him. GLUO certainly knew that Kyo Junian was unreliable, so he didn't want him to do anything. If he wanted to follow, he could follow. There would be plenty of opportunities for him to contribute in the future. The hotel waiter had obviously received special training. After leading GLUO to the door, the waiter stopped and made a gesture of invitation. Noisy, chaotic. GLUO pushed open the door and saw the messy crowd in the hall. Mengwu didn't know whether he wanted to reward his men or show his strength to someone. Today, he directly booked a hall of nearly 1,000 square meters, set up 40 to 50 tables, and 400 to 500 drunkards. Everyone was really high when they drank, and they were arm in arm with each other, boasting about their glorious years. In short, this banquet was very successful, and the whole hall was a mess. It seemed that, in order to prevent something unpleasant, Mengwu did not call the waiter in. The people in charge of reception at the door of the hall were a few young people who were not bad. They probably had never seen such a big boss show off his position, so they were very humble. "Hello, are you? I'm looking for Mengwu." GLUO pulled down his hood to reveal his face, and then put his backpack and steel pipe on the other side, showing no malice. "Looking for Master Mengwu?" The young man probably had never met his boss's boss up close, and at this time, he suddenly met someone who dared to call him Mengwu and was stunned. "Yes, I'm looking for him. Where is he?" GLUO took off his coat, that was covered with snow, revealing the thin fleece underneath. GLUO's fleece was a little old. He had worn it a long time ago. On his chest was a woven cartoon lion, which was very contrasting. "Mengwu I, at the innermost table." "Okay, thank you." GLUO smiled and patted his shoulder. The young man was a little unsure of GLUO at this time. Who was this man who was not much older than him? Why did he dare to call him Meng Wu when he came in and even walked over to see him? If he wasn't a big boss, he would definitely not dare to do this. But if he was a big boss, why was he dressed so shabby? Kid, it's cold today, go home early. GLUO was ferocious to ordinary gangsters, but he was really nice to the ignorant young man in front of him. After all, men have two major hobbies. One is to pull decent women into the water, and the other is to persuade prostitutes to become good. In this situation, this young man in his early 20s has stepped into a puddle of muddy water. He is 2 or 3 years younger than GLUO, but he is so ignorant. He is really a suitable comparison object, which can make people feel a sense of accomplishment. Okay. Thank you. The young man looked at GLUO blankly. On the other side, several people who were responsible for reception like him thought he was in trouble, so they came over together. The young man was really good. He stopped a few people and prevented them from clashing with GLUO. Then he and his companions explained a few words. Several people looked at GLUO in confusion, but they had no intention of approaching. Facing the scrutiny of these people, GLUO didn't care. He was still smiling and looked like a kind old man. These people were only a little younger than GLUO. They stood here to greet guests and thought they were very glorious because they knew various big guys and saw the glory of their boss. In their hearts, they were envious and yearning. They also wanted to live such a beautiful and free life, and they also wanted to have a group of brothers who go through wind and rain and live a life of feasting and drinking. Are you all together? 1 or 2 are my acquaintances, but the others are not. The young man began to wonder about GLUO's identity because his companions said a few words to him. After all the people who came were dressed very decently. Only GLUO was in rags, carrying a backpack and holding a steel pipe, which was obviously not right. However, GLUO did not mean to be anxious now. Instead, he chatted with him very kindly, and the young man agreed. But he was not a fool. Someone had already gone to find the eldest brother, and he would recognize GLUO's identity later, and he would do whatever he wanted. What do you think? Why did you get into this business? GLUO pretended not to see that they went to find someone, and still chatted with him. I don't know why. GLUO especially wanted to teach these kids a lesson today. A good lesson. A lesson in life. They are still not too deep in the industry, and there is still hope to get out. Isn't this good? There are even 17 or 18 people in the industry. If they go back to high school to repeat their studies, they will have a bright future. In order to teach them, GLUO gave up his previous plan. He did not choose to approach Meng Wu quietly, then subdue him, and force him to tell everything. That would be too unchallenging and too unimpactful. This world is not as beautiful as it seems. The more beautiful these people are now, the more miserable their future will be. Except for those big sharks who have successfully changed their careers, there are only a few who can walk a good road alive. They all died halfway. I'm telling you, it's not good to be in the underworld. You are still young now. Hurry up and learn a skill and change your career. GLUO is now patting the young man's shoulder with a sincere look, saying that I was also at your age, and I regret it. However, GLUO looks about the same age as him. Where does he get so much experience? At this time, several young people around him can see that GLUO is here to make trouble. On this day, there are more than 400 people in their club attending the banquet. He came here to cause trouble. Isn't this courting death? Or rather, there is something wrong with his brain. The young man turned his head and looked at GLUO as if he was looking at a fool, but this kid could still be saved, as he did not directly call GLUO a psychopath. Of course, it is also possible that he is very cautious and wants to wait for his elder brother to come and confirm GLUO's identity and then beat GLUO up severely to avenge his wasted feelings. Alas, if you don't listen to the old man, you will suffer the consequences. That, is it your elder brother? GLUO did not care about the attitude of the young man. He stretched out his hand and pointed to the side, indicating that someone was coming. At this time, the young man who had just left was walking towards this side with a middle-aged man with a sturdy aura. Although the middle-aged man had obviously drunk a lot of wine, he was not drunk and his demeanor was still there. Who are you? As a well-known figure under Meng Wu, the middle-aged man's tone of voice was obviously different from that of the gangster. He frowned and approached Luo step by step. I'm Retribution. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Teaching. I'm Retribution. When hearing this answer, not only the middle-aged man who asked the question was stunned, but also several young people beside him were confused. What is this person talking about? Is he crazy? Today, Master Meng Wu is holding a banquet, and 400 or 500 people are drinking and having fun. Why did he break in alone? Is he here to assassinate, or to show his invincibility? Don't believe it? The smile on Luo's face gradually faded, revealing a somewhat regretful expression. He took a step back, as if retreating inside deeply. Then, at this moment, the position where Luo retreated was exactly where the steel pipe was placed. He stretched his right hand back and held the steel pipe silently like picking up a flower. And then it was a storm. From extreme stillness to extreme movement, from talking and laughing to chopping people with a knife, Luo's change came without any signs, as fast as lightning and thunder. Luo held the weapon in his hand, leaned forward, and took 2-inch steps. In a few tenths of a second, he covered the step back before, and at the same time slightly shortened the distance between the front and back. Then, Luo turned his wrist, held the steel pipe behind him horizontally in his hand, and swept it across like a swinging baseball bat. What a pity. Luo's voice was barely audible in the wind sound of the steel pipe. His eyelids drooped slightly, and his eyes were dim, as if he had not woken up. At that moment, the powerful kinetic energy acting on the steel pipe turned into potential energy with afterimages. Because it was too fast, the expression on the middle-aged man's face did not have time to change from sarcasm to horror, and he was hit in the head by the steel pipe. Bang! The sound of the steel pipe and the bone colliding was unexpectedly crisp. The middle-aged man's head was like a baseball that was hit, splattering blood and flying to the side. His body was like being pulled by his head, and his neck suddenly tilted to the limit, and then fell to the ground with a bang, and there was no sound. Because Luo's movements were too swift, even though the middle-aged man was already in a state of unknown life and death, the young people watching had not yet reacted. Or in their worldview, before a fight, everyone always has to talk about benefits, pretend to be cool, and finally start fighting. However, this person simply has no martial ethics. He was still smiling and chatting in the last second, and he started fighting directly in the next second, and he beat him to death. That's still. What a pity. All of Luo's movements were actually completed in these 7 words. He took a step back, picked up the steel pipe, took 2 steps forward, and swung it horizontally with force. 3 seconds. 4 movements. When everything is connected together, it is suffocating cruelty and madness. Kid, see, the gangsters will not end well. Luo held the bloody steel pipe in his right hand and gently patted the young man next to him with his left hand. The young man was frightened and trembled. Looking at the boss with blood on the ground, he couldn't even speak. The person who was able to speak and move just now instantly lay on the ground without any response. His skull was sunken, and breathing became a conditioned reflex of the body. How could he still be alive? This is the first lesson I teach you. This world is full of threats. Luo smiled, but the young people around him were trembling, as if they saw a demon, and even forgot to breathe. It's not that they haven't seen people being beaten, and some have even seen people being beaten to death. But they have never seen a person be so cruel that he would beat someone to death with a stick. What's more terrifying is that he is still laughing, and he is still talking about reason with a smile. What about class? Such a person, either a madman or a pervert, there is no reason to kill. Child, don't delay yourself. Go to school, go to work. You all have a bright future. Luo couldn't tell why. Since meeting Suking-han and using the ability of death retracing twice, Luo felt that his heart was getting older and older, and he always liked to sigh and sigh. Perhaps it is because he has died that he can better appreciate the preciousness of life. So when he sees these young people who have gone the wrong way, he can't help but teach them a lesson. To be honest, they still have hope and can return to normal life. This point makes GLUO very envious. When you stare into the abyss is also staring at you. GLUO has walked too deep into the darkness. The reason why he didn't notice it is that he walked very slowly, but now, when he found out, everything is too late. All he can choose is to go on. Child, it's cold today, go home early. GLUO shook his head with emotion. At this time, people in the distance have already noticed the situation on this side, and a fierce turbulence is gradually spreading. Okay. The young man stood in front of GLUO, his legs trembling. He felt like peeing, but he didn't dare. He secretly glanced at the steel pipe in GLUO's hand. Obviously, it was stained with blood before. Although it was wiped, it couldn't be wiped clean. Some places have turned black and red. What's your name? Zhao Ping Cheng. Zhao Ping Cheng? Nice name. It seems that your parents love you very much. I hope you can succeed safely. Success is hard, and success is even harder. Come on. GLUO was like a nagging old man. Zhao Ping Cheng had ignored all these people before and just walked away. But now, he not only listened to GLUO's words seriously, but also nodded continuously, indicating that he understood and was very obedient. My name is GLUO, G of Jiuan and LUO of Luoshu. I'm not here to uphold justice, but just to find someone. GLUO took back his hand on Zhao Ping Cheng's shoulder and took another step back, indicating that he had no ill will towards him. To uphold justice, you need to be righteous, but I'm just here to find Mengwu. I kill people, so I don't need to be righteous. GLUO held the steel pipe in his right hand and turned his body towards the restless banquet. More than a dozen people who found something wrong here had already walked over. They all had chairs in their hands and were not scared by the steel pipe in GLUO's hand. Kid, leave while you still can. GLUO waved at Zhao Ping Cheng. Zhao Ping Cheng looked at GLUO's pupils that seemed to be shining and nodded as if possessed by a ghost. At this moment, Zhao Ping Cheng saw envy in GLUO's eyes. Why would such a powerful person look at him with envy? What did he envy of him? Identity? Status? Age? No, none of them. He just envied himself for being able to leave and look back. Okay. Zhao Ping Cheng's brain circuit was completely destroyed by GLUO's behavior. He didn't even know what he was thinking. It was just that at this time, he really started to walk back. It was a very close distance, just a few steps, and Zhao Ping Cheng walked to the door. He pulled the door open with force and walked out, and then he stood outside the door and turned to look at the figure. And it was not until this time that Zhao Ping Cheng finally had the opportunity to take a good look at this charitable but fierce, crazy but kind stranger. Chapter 63. Why? The man who called himself GLUO had a delicate and resolute appearance, but it was difficult to judge his age. He seemed to have the stubbornness of an 18 or 19-year-old, but also the calmness of a 24 or 25-year-old. The clothes he wore were very ordinary and obviously not worth much, especially the fleece coat he was wearing, which had a woven lion pattern on it. It was a bit old, and it was probably only worn by high school students. At this time, the people who were eating the banquet had already noticed the situation. More than a dozen people came around with benches. In the distance, a dense crowd of heads were walking over. Just one look was enough to make people feel scared. However, this man was just holding a steel pipe and standing there indifferently, as if he was alone against thousands of enemies. What was even more outrageous was that his eyes were still looking at him. After confirming that he had walked out of the door, he smiled with relief. What do you want to do? Zhao Ping Cheng stood outside the door, feeling relieved after surviving a disaster, but also a little complicated. He looked at this person who taught him a lesson, and for some reason, he suddenly felt a little sad, because he might die. As if it was a final farewell, the person inside the door nodded to him, then turned around, faced the dark crowd, and began to move forward. Zhao Ping Cheng actually wanted to say something just now, but he couldn't speak. Zhao Ping Cheng felt his legs shaking violently. He bent down, rubbed his calves vigorously with his palms, and then he stood up again, and suddenly he had the courage. Run. Run quickly. Xiao Pingcheng shouted at the top of his lungs, and most of the people in the hotel might have heard it. However, the man did not look back, nor did he run away, but just straight forward. A raincoat. Ren Pingsheng. Jialuo's voice changed from a soft hum to a roar. He first walked forward, and then faster and faster. In the end, he almost crashed into the crowd like a cannonball. The gangsters who had been fighting for years drank a lot of alcohol, and were surrounded by their companions. How could they have any idea of fear? More than a dozen of them formed a circle, and walked forward with chairs. However, they did not expect, or they had never encountered it before, that a person alone, facing so many people besieging him, would not advance but retreat, and rush so fast and so fiercely. Jialuo did not dodge the chair that was thrown at him. He blocked his face with his left arm, and rushed directly forward. The swinging chair hit Jialuo's body, making a dull sound, but Jialuo did not retreat half a step, and the expression on his face did not change. He just moved forward, always forward. Bang! Jialuo crashed into the crowd of people who were blocking him. The 2 or 3 people closest to him were directly knocked out by him, and fell to the ground, and turned into rolling gourds. These people were holding the chairs of the restaurant, and could not be flexible at all. At a very close distance, Jialuo began to perform a killing show. Like a cold arrow in the clamor and a cold knife in the dark night, Jialuo dodged the chair that was thrown at him, and then stabbed the steel pipe in his hand through the floor. Under the rapid force, the 1.85 meter man was directly pierced through the left chest by the steel pipe, and this position is the heart. The experienced thug had many scars on his body. He had chopped people, and was chopped by others. He lowered his head, and looked at the steel pipe that passed through his heart. His mind was not surprised by Jialuo's strength, nor was it afraid of death. He just felt very strange. Why, in this peaceful world, there are still people who dare to kill people casually? Why? Yes, why? With a burst of heart-wrenching pain, the steel pipe was pulled out of the thug's chest, and his heart was pierced. The blood pressure in the artery was squeezed, and the blood rushed 2 or 3 meters high like a fountain. Several people close to him were immediately sprayed with blood. They looked at their fallen companions, as if they were blown in the face by the cold wind, and suddenly woke up from the alcohol. People, dead. This person is killing people. This person is not fighting, he is killing people. Because Jialuo was too cruel, or to say, that killing people was as light as killing pigs. Even the big thugs who had chopped all the way were frightened. At this moment, Jialuo held the bloody steel pipe in his hand. His red juice flowed on his hand, which was sticky and slippery to the touch, which was very annoying. Today, I just want to beat you to death, or be beaten to death by you. Jialuo didn't seem to have the concept of martial virtue in his heart. When the people around him didn't move, Jialuo didn't stop. He kicked the nearest chair away, then held the iron pipe with both hands and smashed it towards his neck with a stick. Crack. Like the sound of chewing brittle bones, the man's neck was directly twisted to 90 degrees, without even a scream, and fell to the ground with a plop. The next second, Jialuo kicked the face bone of the person next to him, and then he fell forward. Jialuo took the opportunity to meet him. The weight of 200 kilograms was supported by Jialuo with one hand, and then a back throw, smashing the man head down to the ground. Kill him. At this time, as if they were finally shocked by death, or they were afraid of being killed by Jialuo, the gangsters finally started to go crazy. They no longer held back, and went to beat Jialuo to death. That's right. We have to decide life and death. Jialuo stretched out his hand, and grabbed the chair that hit his head. He pulled hard, and pulled the person holding the chair over. Then Jialuo kicked him in the face. The inhuman force flattened the man's facial features. His head flew out like a bowling ball and hit the pillar with a thud. He never got up again. I'm going to die, comrades. Won't you accompany me? Jialuo's smile was excited and crazy. His eyes were shining. He looked like he was about to cry, but he held back his tears. Tonight, in 2 or 3 hours, he will die. Su Qinghan may also die. Why, when the 2 good people are dead, can these people still live happily? What they did to Su Qinghan will also be imposed on every merchant on the old street. They make money from the sweat and blood of others, and they are not ashamed but proud. Why, in this world, such a peaceful world, there are still people who can share sin so unscrupulously? Are you happy making money that tortures people? GLUO was about to die, so he was completely crazy. The things he experienced after meeting Sukinghan had changed him forever. Those who are close to the abyss will be swallowed by the abyss. A dying man's words are good, so GLUO had a good attitude towards Zhao Pingcheng. He taught him a lesson in the most impressive way. From today on, Zhao Pingcheng will definitely not touch the dark things again. He will wash away the filth and walk towards the light again. It's great. There is still a chance to turn back. Unfortunately, he didn't have it. All he could do was to prevent future generations from mourning future generations. So today, he let some young people who could still be saved turn back, and then send the damned to hell. Mengwu, I'm here to find you. Chapter 64, Cruel Decision. In this peaceful era, few people have seen real fighting. In the early years, the gangsters would fight to the death for money and for their base, but now, everything is about game. Fighting within the rules, not to mention killing, even hurting people has become the last resort. But after all, there are still people who have seen hundreds of people fighting on the long street, and the blades and blood merged into a tragic scene. The people at the bottom relied on being ruthless and desperate enough to climb to a position where they could put down their knives. They are alive, so they succeeded. However, at this moment, they finally remembered the most original fear of human beings again. In a real battlefield, money and status have completely lost their meaning. If they want to live, they either kill their enemies or run away. Unnecessary resistance. Whispering, GLUO easily avoided a pot of soup and vegetables thrown at him, and then he tripped the person next to him, causing the short fat man to fall directly to the ground. However, GLUO did not let him fall, but leaned forward and blocked the steel pipe in front of his throat. Then, GLUO used his body as a shield to block a wine bottle on the side. Then GLUO held both ends of the steel pipe with both hands and strangled his neck from behind. Save me. The fat man could no longer speak clearly. He stared as if he was eager for something. He grabbed the steel pipe with both hands and tried his best to loosen the steel pipe that was tightening his neck. However, his struggle for life was meaningless. GLUO's eyes swept across the faces of the people around him. The gangsters who were already frightened stopped at the same time. My name is GLUO, call Mengwu out. GLUO seemed to be showing something. He pressed his knees against the fat man's back, and his arms suddenly tightened. There was a grinding sound. The fat man stared, and the struggle on his hands finally stopped. Then, GLUO pulled out the steel pipe, and the fat man weighing more than 200 pounds fell to the ground like a boneless person, with blood foam flowing from his nostrils, looking extremely terrifying. Cube, kill. To be able to go from having nothing to wearing a suit and leather shoes, there must be some ruthless people among the gangsters. At the moment of fear, a thin-looking man directly picked up the glass turntable on the table, blocked it in front of him, and rushed towards GLUO without dodging. A bit of style. GLUO was surrounded by corpses, but this man rushed over even though he knew he would die. This was indeed a ruthlessness that ordinary people did not have. It was also a compliment to him that he did not choose to dodge, but kicked the glass turntable directly from the front, and then his foot was printed on the man's chest, kicking the man into a rolling gourd. But at this moment, a square-faced strong man suddenly rushed over from behind GLUO and hugged GLUO tightly from behind. Fuck him. The square-faced man seemed to know that he couldn't control GLUO, so he tried his best as soon as he came up. The square-faced man had obviously practiced judo and joint skills. He risked his life and limbs, but GLUO couldn't get rid of him. GLUO didn't choose to throw down the steel pipe and get rid of the square-faced man with both hands. Instead, he grabbed the other's arm with only one left hand, twisted it suddenly, and turned his forearm 90 degrees. Then, GLUO grabbed his other arm, and when he was about to cripple it, the man who had been kicked down by him had already rushed over. The thin man's face was covered with blood at this time. He picked up a piece of plate fragments from the ground and stabbed it directly into GLUO's eye socket like a knife. Okay. GLUO nodded approvingly. He admitted that he underestimated these people. In order not to overturn, GLUO finally used real strength. He held the left arm of the square-faced man behind him, squatted down, and then pulled hard. In the face of absolute power, all skills are a joke. The joint skills that the square-faced man relied on for survival were directly broken by GLUO's pull. He couldn't even react. The whole person flew backwards like a cat or dog thrown by a child. It seemed intentional, but it seemed unintentional. The square-faced man who was thrown away just bumped into the thin man who rushed over. The two fell to the ground like bowling balls, and the corners of the plate scratched blood on their arms. Brothers, he is alone. Kill him. As if encouraged, the cooperation between the square-faced man and the thin man finally gave these people hope. They were all bloody ruthless people. Being scared like this by a young child, everyone held their breath in their hearts and started to fight desperately at this time. After all, in their minds, they were the victims. It was a good party, and finally someone broke in and started killing. If they didn't kill him, how could they have the face to mix in the underworld in the future? After half a lifetime of fighting and dying, they finally accumulated fame and status. If they give in today, they will definitely not be able to keep their industry in the future, and no one will follow them. So, they have no choice. Like GLUO, when people step into the darkness, they can no longer touch the light, because darkness pollutes not only the body, but also the soul. Now, it's just the beginning. GLUO twisted his neck and smashed the steel pipe in his hand against the table next to him, breaking half of the tablet top. Today, I will break your spine. What you believe in, what you have to give back. GLUO gritted his teeth, and the last bit of compassion in his heart disappeared. These people have been causing trouble for many years. They are obviously on the wrong path, but because they are too twisted, they actually think they are on the right path. So, today GLUO will break their spines in an upright manner, let them understand that they have chosen the wrong path, and mistakes must pay the price. It's only a matter of time. Everyone here will die a miserable death. GLUO's steps were like thunder. Almost as an afterimage, he crashed into the crowd. Then he pierced a man's neck with a gun and threw him up. The gushing blood drew a long arc, and the screaming man hit the glass lamp on the ceiling. In the sound of shattering, the broken dishes and bowls were scattered all over the banquet table along with countless glass shards. The man lay on the table, bleeding like a slaughtered pig. The banquet of drinking and talking came to an end. The killing and chaos that spread from the gate finally surged from the simple corners to the entire hall like waves. 300 or 400 blood-stained bastards finally gathered together at this time. They were apt in murderous intent and determination, and launched a wolf-like fight towards the lone figure. Why is it like this? Outside the door of the hall, Zhao Pingcheng knelt on the ground in horror. As a participant and a bystander, he understood the whole process, but it was precisely because of this understanding that Zhao Pingcheng didn't understand it even more. All this, why did it turn out like this? Chapter 65, Soldier Ants. Yeah, why it turned out like this. Qiao Jianyan stood not far behind Zhao Pingcheng. Through the open door, he could see everything in the hall. Qiao Jianyan thought that GLUO was very powerful, but he really didn't expect that he would be so inhuman. That's right, the fight in the hall can only be described as inhuman. GLUO was alone, holding a steel pipe more than 1 meter long, facing more than 400 old bastards with blood on their faces. But he was alone, constantly moving forward and rushing. People kept dying in his hands, and people kept falling beside him. In Qiao Jianyan's view, this was a massacre. GLUO could kill people with just one move. The hard bones of humans were like plasticine in his hands. He killed people lightly, without any fireworks. However, this was murder. It was murder. From GLUO, everyone could feel that it was despair to heartbreak, madness to indifference, eagerness to calmness. From the time he killed the first person, the people who died in his hands became a number, meaningless. Anyway, it was just his burial companion before his death. Yes, everyone can see that GLUO wants to die and will die. Qiao Jianyan accompanied GLUO all the way here. He never thought that GLUO would go to this point. No one knows what forced him and why he did this. In the beginning of the fight, GLUO deliberately dodged and evaded, but now, many times, he resisted the attacks of others and then killed them quickly with the most brutal method. The man whose neck was twisted by GLUO turned his head 180 degrees. He was unscathed at the beginning, but now he also bleeds. Fortunately, his blood is also red. In Kyojanian's view, GLUO at this time is like a beast with no way to go and forced into a desperate situation. He may have lost his humanity. He only has a breath, and he must die with a breath to kill a piece of the enemy's flesh. There are nearly 400 people. At the beginning, GLUO could still be seen, but later when he rushed to the middle, he was completely surrounded. Everyone has gone crazy, or, if they don't kill this person, they may really go crazy. If, today, now, this person doesn't die, everyone present will be tortured by this nightmare forever. He is like the god of death, like an executioner, taking away not only human lives, but also the cruelty and brutality in the bones of all those who witnessed it. Because too many people died, really, too many. Every hour and every minute, names fell one after another, and the blood dyed the entire banquet all red. Many of these bastards had killed people. They were originally the most hideous people, but, today, they saw the devil. These people are finished. Kyojanian closed his eyes and listened to the screams and roars in the hall. It is certain that after today, these people, 90% will suffer from hemophobia. Not to mention gangs. They are afraid to kill even a chicken. Their spines have been broken, and they can never stand up again. The most ruthless people in this city once crawled across the class in that grey era, boasting that they were cruel and ruthless, but today, they were killed by a young man in his early 20s with all their courage and arrogance. Simply. Kyojanian shook his head and wanted to say invincible several times, but he knew that GLUO would die today, so he lost interest. Just now, the hotel staff had called the police. Of course, it was impossible not to call the police in this situation. Thinking of the troubles later, Kyojanian couldn't help but sigh, but at the same time, he was a little proud. It is also an honor to meet such a person and walk side by side for a while. In the future, no matter how he mixes, no matter who he meets, he can tell this experience. Others will definitely think it sounds like bragging, but how can they know that the truth is more exaggerated than the story? Hey kid, what's your name? Kyojanian didn't know the young man who was standing at the door and was scared silly, but he felt that at this time, he should do something else. My name is Zhao Pingcheng. Zhao Pingcheng? Nice name. Do you have any cigarettes? Kyojanian's legs were actually a little weak at this time. He squatted on the ground. Zhao Pingcheng was kneeling on the ground, but he didn't even notice it. His tongue was a little stiff when he spoke. Yes. Give me one. Kyojanian only remembered at this time that he had finished smoking his cigarettes before and didn't buy more. He had promised GLUO before that he would light a cigarette for him after everything was over. He couldn't break his promise. All for you. Zhao Pingcheng's hands were shaking so badly that it was difficult to open the cigarette box, so he gave all of them to Kyojanian directly. Yo, the cigarettes are good. My boss gave them to me. Zhao Pingcheng wiped his face and lowered his head. He didn't even dare to look up, because if he looked up, he would see the boss's body. To be honest, if he could, Zhao Pingcheng really wanted to run quickly and run home. However, his legs were so weak that he couldn't stand up. It was really useless. Zhao Pingcheng, you are lucky, really lucky. Kyojanian opened the cigarette box, took out a cigarette, lit it with fire, took a deep breath, and eased his guilty conscience a little. Today, you should die. Zhao Pingcheng did not answer Kyojanian's words, but just nodded. Zhao Pingcheng did not know Kyojanian, nor did he know who he was, but at the moment, there were screams and killings in the hall. The person who could still smoke and talk to him in this situation was definitely not a simple person. Look, how many people have died in the hall, and they are still dying. Do you think it's really okay to go on like this? Kyojanian likes to do things in a non-stick pan. He only persuades others, but stays out of it himself. Especially in this situation, he must not get involved in trouble again. So, the best person is the kid in front of him. There is only one person who can solve the current situation. Guess who this person is? Meng Wu. Zhao Pingcheng's voice was a little hoarse. This time he did not call Meng Wu Jie or Meng Wu Yi. He called Meng Wu like GLUO. Yes, it's only him. All this happened because of him. Where is he now? He was at the main table in the middle, but now, Xiaoping Cheng was assigned to be the receptionist. Of course, he knew where the host was. He looked up and saw a huge crowd of people. They looked like soldier ants, but their leader was gone. He ran away. Although Qiao Jianian asked a question, the answer was definitely yes. Xiaoping Cheng looked up and looked at Qiao Jianian with fear in his eyes. He seemed to understand what he was going to do. Don't get me wrong. I just thought you could give him a call. Chapter 66. Results. Call. Xiaoping Cheng looked at Qiao Jianian in horror, not quite sure what he meant. Logically speaking, since Meng Wu had already chosen to leave, what was the point of him making a phone call? Yes, call and tell him that all the guests he invited are going to die. Qiao Jianian really wanted everything to end quickly. Too many people had died today. Now only Meng Wu could give Jialuo an explanation, so that this monster would stop devouring human lives. Therefore, he had to come back and give everyone an explanation. Will the phone call be useful? Call quickly. He should have just escaped, and he probably just ran downstairs now. If he ran far, he wouldn't be able to get back, even if he wanted to. Qiao Jianian didn't know if calling would be useful, but as long as Meng Wu wasn't really stupid, he would definitely come back. A celebration banquet had come here, and so many people had died. After today, if he didn't die, it would be worse than dying. If you are a gangster, you have to make do with loyalty and responsibility. As a boss, you got into this kind of trouble, so many people died, and you ran away. Apart from anything else, after today, his status in the underworld will be completely gone. Then, his enemies will jump out and take the opportunity to push everyone down. In that case, I'm afraid that his family property will not be left. Only death today can make everything have an ending that everyone can accept. Qiao Jianian did not explain these things and these principles to Xiaoping Cheng, and Xiaoping Cheng did not ask. He just took out his mobile phone tremblingly and dialed the number he got because of the banquet. In fact, even Qiao Jianian felt that this call would not go through. How could Meng Wu, who had already run away with his tail between his legs, answer the call from his subordinates? However, things always go to incredible places. Xiaoping Cheng's call actually went through, and before he even said anything, Meng Wu on the other end said something to him. Xiaoping Cheng nodded, and the other end hung up the phone. What's going on? Where did Meng Wu run to? Meng Wu's boss is in the underground garage. Now, he's going to the rooftop. Xiaoping Cheng was really scared now. He was only 20 years old this year and really didn't know anything. He just came here to make a living. But he was still a temporary worker, and he encountered such a thing. What did he ask you to do? Qiao Jianian saw that Meng Wu must have told Xiaoping Cheng something. According to Meng Wu's route of action, there was no need to guess what Xiaoping Cheng was entrusted with. To be honest, in this kind of fighting situation, any message would cost lives. He asked me to tell Jialuo that he was waiting for him on the rooftop. Xiaoping Cheng took a deep breath and wiped the tears from his face with his clothes. He got up from the ground and suddenly stood straight. Too many people have died. No more can die. Xiaoping Cheng's decisiveness was beyond Qiao Jianian's imagination. He even exchanged positions. Qiao Jianian heard about this kind of work and absolutely refused without saying a word. In a situation where lives were to be lost, who would dare to get involved? Thank you for your reminder. Xiaoping Cheng turned to Qiao Jianian and thanked him, then stepped resolutely into the banquet hall, and then shouted out loud the words that Meng Wu had given him. Jialuo, Meng Wu is waiting for you on the top floor. Within 3 minutes, if you don't go up to see him, he will jump directly from the roof. You will get nothing except his death. Xiaoping Cheng shouted until his voice was hoarse. He used up all his strength and shouted 3 times, and his voice echoed in the hall. Just when Xiaoping Cheng thought it was useless, the wailing and chaotic sounds in the distance suddenly stopped. Haha, good calculation. No wonder you can get to that position. In the middle of the crowd, the bloody monster who was fighting, as if he encountered something happy, laughed heartily. Then, he threw down the steel pipe in his hand and walked out with big strides. The crowd that was desperately surrounding and killing before, like a flock of sheep seeing a tiger, silently parted the road and let this monster, that they could not kill, leave. These people had their spines broken, and were no longer bloody. The reason they were still resisting just now was, because the other party did not stop. Now the monster has stopped. Although many people died, they did not die, so, I really don't want to fight anymore. Nearly 1/3 of the 400 people who attended the banquet have already laid down. If this kind of fighting was placed on the battlefield in ancient times, the army would have collapsed long ago. The reason why these bastards did not collapse was because they had drunk a lot of wine. The alcohol was too strong, and they had no ability to think. After seeing blood, they became excited and crazy. However, this kind of momentum, that could fight desperately after drinking, was killed by one person. The corpses and bloodstains all over the ground scared even the drunk people. Xiaoping Cheng, you're great. In silence, Gluo walked out of the crowd with a smile on his face. He pulled off a tablecloth from the seat, wiped his hands, and found a clean place to wipe his face. On the way, he rubbed the wound, and Gluo grimaced in pain. Mr. Gluo. Xiaoping Cheng looked up, and for some reason, tears could not stop flowing out. Obviously, Gluo was a murderer, but at this time, feeling the death on Gluo, Xiaoping Cheng couldn't say anything. More than 100 lives died in Gluo's hands. Although he was an evolver with a physical fitness 4 times that of ordinary people, in the end, there were too many people, and he could only exchange his injuries for his life, and he had a lot of wounds on his body. In addition to his own blood, Gluo's body was more covered with other people's blood. His black casual pants were already wet and soaked in blood. Although nothing could be seen, the color of the pants was much darker. The thin fleece with a lion pattern was also torn beyond recognition, especially the area on Gluo's chest, where the blood had formed scabs, making him look disheveled and horrible. Xiaoping Cheng, this is the last lesson I'll teach you. Gluo pointed his finger at the ground, then at himself, with an extremely serious look on his face. In this world, people who have done evil have no chance of turning back. No matter how they try to cleanse themselves, they will not die well in the end. Remember? Remember. Xiaoping Cheng nodded heavily. Gluo patted him on the shoulder, strode past him, and never looked back. Mr. Gluo, I'm here as promised. Outside the door, Xiaoping Cheng took out a cigarette from the cigarette box and handed it to Gluo, who was walking out of the door. Gluo looked up at him, but did not take the cigarette. He just smiled and nodded. Next time, you're a good person. Next time, I'll give you the choice you want. Chapter 67, Dialogue. Next time. Qiao Jianyan felt the weirdness in Gluo's words and couldn't help but frowned. He wanted to ask Gluo, how could there be a next time after he killed so many people, but unfortunately Gluo didn't stop, but walked into the elevator without looking back until the top floor. When Gluo stepped onto the roof of the hotel, the snowflakes in the sky had become much sparser, and the pure white covered everything in sight. A line of footprints stretched left and right into the darkness. Mengwu, I'm glad you can come back. Gluo walked into the wind and snow calmly. Most of his clothes were wet. Now the cold wind blew, and his whole body was very cold, but Gluo was smiling, like a spring breeze. Gluo, you are a lunatic. Mengwu obviously drank a lot of wine today. In such cold weather, his face was still hot and red. He was already a successful middle-aged man sitting on the edge of the building. He only needed to lie back, and he would fall down the building immediately. At a height of 100 meters, he would be a meat pie and even gods could not save him. Really? I think I'm pretty normal, but I live too cautiously. Gluo actually likes snow very much. It's a unique experience to watch the snow scene in the city in such an open and tall place. So, Gluo was very happy to see it. Mengwu raised his head, looked at Gluo's expression of pure enjoyment, and sighed deeply. I'm actually very cautious. Really? Maybe, but I'm a little unlucky. Gluo shrugged his shoulders, did not deny Mengwu's words, but expressed regret. In this world, this era, and even this city, there are many people who do evil, and many of them even climb to high positions by doing evil. You must be very unwilling. Why are they fine, but you have been living on thin ice, but you were inexplicably killed, and, so bloody. Don't worry, you are not the first, nor the last. Those people are unscrupulous in this era. One day, they will not die a good death, and many people will even have a worse ending than you. As an evolver and the only one who can see the giant pupil in the sky, GLUO is of course qualified to say this, but Mengwu doesn't understand. Of course, it doesn't matter whether he understands or not. Mengwu, you have enjoyed a lot, so be content. Look at me, I'm not cruel, I'm not strong. But what's the matter? I'm still living a submissive life, more than you. How uncomfortable I am. Did I say anything? Mengwu looked at GLUO covered in blood, and actually nodded. Yes, who would have thought that GLUO, who had an ordinary resume, would be so cruel, and so good at fighting? Was it because he hid too deeply, or was it, because of this era, that he had to hide? Compared to him, those hooligans who could only wield machetes and fight bravely were just a group of cocks pecking at insects in the grass, and had no idea what the world was like in the eyes of an eagle. Usually they could peck fiercely, but when they really angered the eagle, they would die without any resistance. Mengwu, your idea is too simple. You think that people can fight but not, but you see, being able to fight me is not bad. GLUO sat casually on the edge of the building. He patted his chest with a very proud expression on his face. No matter who it is, as long as they provoke me, they will die. So, just rest assured. Die peacefully? Mengwu smiled and looked up at the wind and snow in the sky. His brain, which was infected by alcohol, became clearer. It's really unfortunate. This game has no solution. I want to earn this money, and I will definitely die. You can't survive, even if you kill so many people. What you said. I accept it. I will tell you whatever you want to know. Mengwu, did you flatten the spring cake shop? The reason why GLUO chatted with Mengwu in a friendly manner was to ask him for information. Otherwise, do you think Mengwu, the gangster boss, is so easy to control? He is sitting on the edge of the building now and can die in a second. Moreover, GLUO discovered that Mengwu still had a gun in his pocket. Although the threat to him was limited, suicide was very simple. Yes, I'll lead people to flatten it this afternoon. What time? Probably. I went there around 2 or 3 o'clock and left after finishing it at around 5 o'clock. Mengwu didn't actually go there in person, but he paid special attention to this matter. After all, in his memory, GLUO was very good at fighting and was a person who needed to be careful. Moreover, demolishing the cake shop was only the first step of revenge. After that, he would be ruthless to GLUO and beat him directly. There was no need to hold back on Sukinghan, and he would be the most ruthless. It's a pity. Mengwu didn't expect that. He thought he was pulling the wool of a sheep, but he didn't expect that he was pulling the tiger's beard. A set of combined punches, just after the opening move, was stabbed in the heart and could only bleed to death. To be honest, when things got to this point, Mengwu also felt a little wronged. Since you are a winged tiger, you should be more domineering and let these people know how powerful you are. But now, he thought he was in control of the overall situation, but he didn't expect that he would leave no room for maneuver just by pulling a beard of GLUO. It's too reckless. GLUO, I didn't do anything. I just demolished a cake shop. It's just a matter of money. It's easy to solve. Let's talk about it. It's no problem to rebuild a cake shop. Why do we have to make it to this point now? You killed so many people, you can't survive. Mengwu, a gangster, was also aggrieved when talking about this topic. How could it be like this? It's fine that he didn't show his muscles before, but now he doesn't even talk about it and directly kills the whole family. There is no room for maneuver. Hey, did you really do nothing? GLUO deliberately didn't ask about Sukinghan, just to see if Mengwu was aware of her, but during the conversation, Mengwu showed no signs of deceiving, or he didn't need to lie. To be honest, I haven't had time to do it yet. The law says that crimes that have not been committed are not crimes. Mengwu is not a fool. He ran to the underground garage and could drive away. Why did he run upstairs to die? Why else? For his family. Mengwu also knew that today's things have come to this point. If he doesn't die, things will never end. So many people died, and if he ran away, things would be more troublesome. The most terrifying thing is that GLUO may not be caught. With someone like GLUO chasing him, he would wake up in his dreams at night, and his wife and children would become targets. GLUO, who killed so many people, has become a monster. He has no humanity. So, today, now, Mengwu must give GLUO an explanation, so that he can leave with peace of mind. GLUO, I promise, I didn't do anything except demolish the cake shop. You can say I didn't have time to do it, I admit it. Chapter 68, sorry. But, Sukinghan, she's gone. GLUO couldn't see through people's hearts after all, but Mengwu's attitude did not seem like he was lying. If what Mengwu said was true, then it meant that Sukinghan was no longer in the cake shop before 3 o'clock this afternoon. GLUO couldn't be sure of the exact time he left the cake shop, but it should be after 1 o'clock. Arranging the timeline, Sukinghan probably closed the cake shop after he left and disappeared alone. Choosing to leave on Christmas Eve, when business was busiest, Sukinghan must have something very important to do, and it eventually led to her disappearance. Obviously, it was related to Zinke Biopharmaceuticals. Sukinghan, the female owner of the cake shop. I specifically asked my subordinates, she was not there, and the cake shop was closed at the time. Mengwu looked at GLUO's thoughtful expression, feeling indescribably aggrieved, but he had no way out. If the person disappeared, you can go find him, or call the police. Why don't you check the situation? You just run away and kill people like a river. You don't leave any room for mercy. What's wrong with your brain? Are you crazy? Too much resentment and anger accumulated in Mengwu's heart, but now everything has happened, and there is no use saying anything. GLUO, I'm going to die now. There is no need to lie to you. I really don't know the whereabouts of Sukinghan. When Mengwu said this, there was already some request in his tone. The only thing he cares about now is his wife and children. As long as GLUO lets them go, everything will be fine. GLUO was not confused by Mengwu's attitude. He carefully recalled the situation with Sukinghan at noon, and after all, he did not find anything unusual about the girl. Mr. GLUO, to tell you the truth, I'm just a gangster. I'm only in charge of demolition, not the construction company. Building has nothing to do with me. Although I have people behind me, they all treat me as a tool. I dare not take on big things. Mengwu noticed the change in GLUO's expression, so he no longer concealed it, and told GLUO all the problems of the demolition of the old block. Even the construction company behind him was not spared. Mengwu was sure that he was going to die after all. After his death, these things had nothing to do with him. He didn't have to pay a price for telling GLUO. As long as it could be a bargaining chip and could satisfy GLUO, he was willing to say anything. GLUO listened to Mengwu's confession and broke the whole thing down to him. The overall inside story was not shocking. They were all tricks commonly used by construction companies. To make money, they would definitely do anything to make more. Mengwu, you've told me everything I want to know. Don't worry, I have no intention of causing trouble for your wife and children. You don't have to think about revenge. I won't die well later. All GLUO did was to find out the whereabouts of Sukinghan, but since Mengwu didn't know, other information didn't mean much to GLUO. That's it. GLUO sighed and looked downstairs. Dozens of police cars and ambulances came together, and the chaotic lights illuminated the entire downstairs, like the last noise before silence. That's it. In our line of work, if we do too many evil things, retribution will come sooner or later, so, it's good. Mengwu heard the meaning of GLUO's words, and his body relaxed. As long as his wife and children were not involved, he could accept the current outcome. GLUO, I'm sorry. Mengwu's apology sounded very sincere. When a man is about to die, his words are good. At this time, Mengwu finally let it go. After you go down, ask them to forgive you. GLUO closed his eyes and did not accept Mengwu's apology. What he did was too twisted. A simple apology could not possibly cover it up. More importantly, Mengwu had done too many unscrupulous things over the years, killing countless good families. There were many families that were destroyed because of him. Such a person really did not deserve to be forgiven. Even Mengwu should not die so easily. He should be tortured and die in pain and despair. Unfortunately, Luo had killed too many people today, and he was tired, really tired. If there is a next life, I want to be a good person. Mengwu's whisper was like begging God. He closed his eyes, leaned back, and fell to the ground without any waves. Dung. After a long time, a loud noise came from the ground, and Mengwu's body hit a car, directly smashing a dent in the roof, and blood spots and glass burst everywhere. In the dark night, snowflakes danced in the wind. Mengwu, the ruthless and ruthless gangster, died so simply and hastily. The delayed justice was too late. He was not judged in time. What forced him to death was a purer and more brutal evil. Because it was evil, there was no limit and no scruples. Even people like Mengwu have always lived under the protection of social rules. He felt that jumping out of the rules was actually a sign of death. People who think they are high and unscrupulous are actually crawling closer and closer to death. If you break the rules, you must pay the price. Mengwu is no exception, and Luo is no exception. Suking-han, Christmas Eve is over, and Christmas is here. Luo straightened up and stepped on the edge of the building. Under his feet, Mengwu's death brought chaos, and above his head, the chaotic snow seemed to be telling a long story. Suking-han, I like you. Luo opened his arms and suddenly shouted loudly. At this moment, it seemed that he was the only one left between heaven and earth, and the world suddenly became quiet. In his mind, Luo imagined Suking-han's answer, imagined her looking at him with a smile, and telling him the same answer. It was really a beautiful dream. So beautiful that people didn't want to wake up. Unfortunately, the time is up, and the alarm that Luo said suddenly rang softly. The brightest star in the night sky. Can you hear it clearly? The loneliness and sigh in the heart of the person looking up. The brightest star in the night sky. Can you remember the figure that once walked with me and disappeared in the wind? I pray to have a transparent heart and eyes that can shed tears. Give me the courage to believe again, to embrace you across lies. Every time I can't find the meaning of existence, every time I get lost in the night, oh brightest star in the night sky, please guide me to get closer to you. The song that had been precipitated became louder and louder. Luo put down his hand, covered his cheek, and burst into tears. Dung. At this moment, the door of the rooftop was suddenly kicked open, and several people came forward with guns. Luo turned his head and saw a strong light of flashlights. I'm sorry. Luo's expression was a little apologetic. He took a step forward and leaned over to fall into the pale earth. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, The Third Retrospection. 1600 hours on December 24th, 3005. Time marker no 10,016. First round of retrospection. Luo, like a drowning person waking up from suspended animation. Luo's body shook violently, and then the knife in his hand fell down, not cutting his fingers by a hair's breadth. Are you back? What time is it? Luo threw the kitchen knife and beef on the chopping board and rushed to the living room like a possessed man. But when he saw the hourly time, he frowned in a state of collapse. Why is it not morning, but 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Luo already had a bad feeling in his heart, but how could he give up his last hope? Sure enough, when Luo called Suking-han, no one answered. It's too late. Luo sat on the ground unwillingly, his mind in a mess. He grabbed his hair and tried his best to sort out his thoughts. According to the known information, after he left the cake shop at around 1 o'clock, Suking-han should have closed the shop and left. At about 3 o'clock, Mengwu's subordinates came with people. They didn't see Suking-han, but they didn't think much about it and directly demolished the cake shop. Suking-han, who left, must be preparing to do something dangerous or encountered some important decision, so she set the time marker of the retrospective at this time. The problem is back to the original position. Where did Suking-han go alone? Who did he want to see, and why? Luo has been in close contact with Suking-han recently. He didn't notice that Suking-han had any worries, and she went to the cake shop every day recently. She was very careful in running it, and she didn't look like she was preparing to do anything big. So, what Su Qinghan encountered was probably a sudden emergency, so she left without saying goodbye and hurriedly closed the shop and left. Moreover, there are two possibilities as to why Su Qinghan didn't leave a message for GLUO. The first is that the other party is very threatening, and she doesn't want to involve GLUO and let him get involved and bring disaster to himself. Second, the threat from the other party is very small, and there is no need to notify GLUO. She can solve it quickly. Strictly speaking, the first possibility is the greatest, and the second possibility is also possible, but not too great. After all, at present, it seems that Su Qinghan's main enemies are all evolvers. Evolvers with innate abilities are not easy to deal with, and the degree of danger is very high. As for the other side, Su Qinghan does not have many enemies among ordinary people. Except for Meng Wu, who wanted to demolish the former, she has no enemies. As for Meng Wu, GLUO has confirmed that he has not seen Su Qinghan today, and his involvement can be ruled out. So, Su Qinghan encountered a strong enemy. GLUO frowned, feeling that the biggest possibility at the moment was that Su Qinghan's identity was exposed, and Zinke Biopharmaceuticals discovered her, so they decisively encircled and suppressed her. Su Qinghan had no choice but to flee in a hurry. However, if it was an attack from Zinke Biopharmaceuticals, Su Qinghan should not have moved the save file to now. If she was in trouble, she should choose to read the save file to a longer time ago, so that she would have time to move. What happened? Why did they set the save time to now? GLUO still couldn't figure out why Su Qinghan changed the save time. This was probably related to her leaving. Once he found out one thing, the other thing would be clear. What should we do now? GLUO already had a general understanding of the situation in his mind, but he needed to think carefully about how to break the situation. The trouble was that GLUO didn't have much time left. Every minute that passed, Su Qinghan was 1 second closer to danger. If he didn't do something immediately, there would definitely be no news. At this time, the cake shop should have been demolished. It was impossible to stop it. In the future, he could only find an opportunity to ask Meng Wu to compensate. Just like he said before, if the cake shop was demolished, he could pay for it and rebuild it. It was just a matter of money, easy to solve. What really matters is Su Qinghan, but her position. Although GLUO was scratching his head anxiously, he had already sorted out his thoughts. GLUO didn't care about cooking or anything. He just put on his clothes and hurried out. To be honest, GLUO had no idea how to find Su Qinghan at the moment. The best way he could think of was to rush to the cake shop and then investigate the surveillance cameras around. There were not many surveillance cameras near the old street, but there were also some. If GLUO checked every house, he should be able to determine the direction Su Qinghan went. The most regrettable thing was that there was no surveillance camera in the cake shop. GLUO didn't know who Su Qinghan met and what expression she had when she left the cake shop. At the moment, the only thing to be thankful for is that the ability of Death Return is still there. This was the third time GLUO had performed Death Return, but the first 2 times, the time he went back to was when he had not yet taken away his superpowers, so after he came back, he was still able to return. This time, the time GLUO went back to was the time when he had already taken away the Death Return. It was amazing that after GLUO went back, GLUO's ability was still Death Return. However, the time when Death Return returned to Su Qinghan remained unchanged. At 1 o'clock in the morning, if GLUO couldn't find Su Qinghan again, he would still die. Su Qinghan's safety cannot be guaranteed, and Death Return cannot be returned no matter what. GLUO has made up his mind. As long as he does not see Su Qinghan before 1 o'clock tonight, he will go back again no matter what. He must now make the worst plan. Su Qinghan is likely to be dead. He must rely on Death Return to pull her back, otherwise, he will lose her forever. Moreover, this time, because of panic and anxiety, GLUO also deeply felt the limitations of the innate ability Return. GLUO took away Su Qinghan's ability of Death Return, but he did not have the ability to locate the time beacon. There is no doubt that this is the first time GLUO discovered the drawbacks of his innate ability. Death Return is Sukinghan's innate ability, which can go back in time when he dies. However, locating the time beacon of retracing time does not seem to be regarded as part of the ability of Death Return. In other words, locating the time beacon of retracing time is unique to Sukinghan's soul, and only she can do it. It cannot be taken away, imitated, or copied. This is probably the difference between innate ability and acquired skills. Skills can be learned, but innate ability is something you are born with, unique and unparalleled. Now, we should ask the neighbors near the cake shop first. GLUO ran all the way in a hurry, with a burst of speed like a professional runner. In the amazed eyes along the way, GLUO only took a quarter of the usual time to reach the cake shop. At this time, a huge bulldozer was demolishing the last wall of Spring Cake Shop. Chapter 70, Traces. Rumble. The huge bulldozer was like a marching beast. The cake shop, which had become a ruin, had almost no resistance, and collapsed completely in the dense smoke and dust in an instant. The tables and chairs that had not been moved broke like matchsticks, the counter full of cakes was shattered all over the floor, and the most expensive oven was also overturned and deformed. These men of Mengwu may have been ready to beat GLUO up. 20 or 30 people, holding steel pipes, long knives and other things, watched this good show on the side. GLUO's anger had actually been released completely in the previous killing. Regarding the demolition of the cake shop, GLUO did not plan to do anything. However, when he really walked near the cake shop and saw that the place where he and Sukinghan met had become a pile of rubble, his mood still became extremely bad uncontrollably. In the past month, he and Sukinghan walked here in the early morning, opened the folding door of the cake shop together, and prepared the dough and egg batter for baking together. At night, GLUO ran over in a hurry as soon as he got off work, looking at the quiet face of the girl in the darkness and dim lights, until he went home and parted ways. Sukinghan obviously attached great importance to this cake shop, but now, it has been demolished. We can't just listen to one side of Mengwu's words, we should also verify it. GLUO had a cold face, and there was no anger on his expression, but he walked straight towards a group of gangsters. On the old street, every household closed the doors and windows tightly. Although there must be peeping eyes, there were 20 or 30 thugs here, who would dare to go out and watch. So, GLUO, who was alone, became extremely conspicuous. He did not dodge any sight and just walked straight into the crowd. It's him. It's this man. He's here. In the crowd, the gang leader who was once forced by GLUO to eat cake on the ground, recognized GLUO's face at a glance. Now half of his face was wrapped in bandages, and he looked extremely miserable. Good boy, you dare to come over here. This time, Mengwu arranged all the people who can fight. He obviously still hates the first meeting in the tavern. Now that he wants to show his strength and shock the residents of the whole street, he might as well do it. Because the bulldozer is destroying the building, the gangsters are far away. GLUO has to take a detour to go to their side. Otherwise, GLUO will have to go through the ruins of the cake shop. After discovering GLUO, 20 or 30 gangsters began to walk around GLUO. When they found that something was wrong, the bulldozers that were demolishing the house stopped. At this time, GLUO did not choose to go far. He walked straight through the ruins of the cake shop. Halfway, GLUO grabbed a bare steel bar and pulled it hard. I don't know how much strength GLUO used. The more than 2-meter long steel bar was severely twisted due to the demolition. There was a large piece of concrete at the end, but GLUO was pulled out of the ruins. GLUO pursed his lips, lowered his eyes slightly, and walked forward towards the crowd, holding a 2-meter long steel bar in one hand. On the other side of the gang, there were nearly 30 people, all of whom were good at fighting, and they also had weapons such as steel pipes and long knives. Of course, they were full of confidence. A steel bar more than 2 meters long, with a concrete block weighing more than 100 kilograms on top. Is this also considered a weapon? How can you hit someone? How much strength do you need? Can a person roll this thing? However, everyone underestimated GLUO's cruelty. He did not show his strength immediately, but the two sides approached each other. At a distance of about 10 meters, the gangsters accelerated and ran towards him. It was not until this time that GLUO grabbed the steel bar with both hands and swung it violently. GLUO's movements were not standard, and they could not be compared with swinging a hammer, but GLUO's strength was too great. When he pulled up the steel bar, because of the huge force, the concrete block weighing more than 100 kilograms actually made a sound of breaking wind. The gangsters rushed very fast, their faces full of ferocity and brutality, but when they saw the concrete blocks flying towards them, they instantly became as scared as quails. The people in the front almost wanted to run reflexively, but it was too late. Snap, snap, snap. When the concrete hit the people, the sound was like a hammer hitting a chicken bone. The first 2 people who were hit had their chests dented and flew out like volleyballs. Compared to the 2 people who died directly and the 3 people who were knocked away, the people who were swept by the steel bars were luckier. They fell to the ground all at once, and no ribs were intact. Whoosh! GLUO swung the steel bar in his hand and quickly turned behind him. GLUO crossed his hands and grabbed it and swept forward again. At this time, seeing GLUO's brutality and terror, the remaining gangsters immediately dropped their weapons and started running without looking back. When GLUO swung the steel bar for the 3rd time, there was no thug around him, so GLUO directly loosened the steel bar. Under the action of centrifugal force, more than 100 kilograms of concrete flew out like a meteor hammer, smashing the cab of the forklift with a snap. The driver inside was hit in the upper body and instantly lost his voice. GLUO looked at the dozen thugs who escaped and had no interest in chasing them. He walked to the thug who rushed to the front and lifted him up directly. "Who sent you?" "Brother Mengwu asked us to come." To be honest, GLUO's posture just now was too cruel. No one who was hit was intact. But fortunately, the thugs who ran in the front were knocked down by the steel bars because they rushed too far forward. Several bones were broken, but they were definitely not dead. "When did you arrive?" "Around 2:50. "Where's the boss lady of the cake shop?" "We didn't see her. We don't know where she is." The gangster couldn't be honest at this time. He didn't dare to hide anything. After all, there were 4 or 5 gangsters who were hit by concrete 7 or 8 meters away. They were breathing less and breathing more. It was important to save their lives. Without a doubt, GLUO once again confirmed what Mengwu said before. He didn't lie to him. Su Qinghan's disappearance had nothing to do with him. GLUO suddenly felt a gaze. He let go of the gangster in his hand and looked up suddenly. A little further away, the sneaky gaze was quickly turned away. Almost as a conditioned reflex, GLUO chased after him without hesitation. The man was obviously guilty and hurriedly retreated. Not far behind him, a fiery red sports car was parked there. Because he was too anxious, the man almost fell when he opened the car door, but he immediately climbed onto the seat and hurriedly started the car. However, just as the car was about to catch fire, GLUO had already rushed to the side. Without any hesitation, GLUO punched the glass of the cab and pulled the man's head out. "It's you?" Chapter 71, Poaching by Coincidence. To be honest, although GLUO felt the gaze of others, he did not care much. In fact, if that person had not turned around and ran, GLUO would not have chased him. But now, when GLUO saw the owner of the gaze, he could not help but frown. GLUO had only met this person once, just this afternoon. He drove a sports car to buy cakes. At that time, he did not like GLUO and wanted to make trouble, but was severely disgusted by GLUO. Later, he did not dare to do anything and ran away in shame. "Don't hit. Don't hit. I have no ill intentions. I just came to find Su Qinghan. No ill intentions." The rich second generation really just came. He was actually wondering why the cake shop was still open in the morning and was demolished in the afternoon, so he got off the car to ask about the situation. Unexpectedly, he just saw GLUO's great power. More than a dozen gangsters fell to the ground in an instant, and 4 or 5 people who were beaten and flew away were not going to survive. How could he not be afraid? In this situation, no one dared to look at it again, and he must have run away quickly. Of course, he did so. Unexpectedly, he was discovered by GLUO, chased after him, and was grabbed by the dog's head. "Who are you?" Gluo's voice was frighteningly cold because of his anxiety, as if he would kill this person immediately if he didn't give him a satisfactory answer. My name is Yujing. I'm here to find Su Qinghan. I'm here. The rich second generation was grabbed by the head by Gluo, and he didn't dare to move. He seemed to be afraid that Gluo would not believe him, so he hurriedly took out his ID card from his pocket and handed it to Gluo. I came here to give flowers to Su Qinghan. Yujing felt that the strength in Gluo's hand had loosened a little, and he raised his head carefully, observing the expression on Gluo's face. Send flowers? Gluo let go of Yujing's head, reached out to turn off the car, and held the car keys in his hand. Yes. 99 carnations. Yujing pointed to the back seat, and Gluo opened the car door. Sure enough, he saw a large bunch of carnations and a greeting card for Su Qinghan. Why did you send flowers? Gluo was extremely anxious, but his face was expressionless. The clues from Meng Wu had been cut off. Now, Gluo would ask questions about anything related to Su Qinghan. I was upset by what you said this morning, so I wanted to pursue Su Qinghan. Of course I had to send flowers. Yujing didn't dare to say that he wanted to cheat on Gluo. In his opinion, Su Qinghan and Gluo were already together, but why couldn't he interfere in their relationship? As a rich man, chasing girls is nothing more than being thick-skinned and willing to spend money. He drove a sports car over, sent roses, and invited Su Qinghan to the most expensive restaurant for a meal, just to believe that she didn't have any thoughts in her mind. Why not roses, but carnations? Gluo carefully observed Yujing's expression and didn't see any signs of lying. Gluo was even more anxious and his tone became fierce. Yujing was frightened by Gluo's posture. He now regretted trying to steal Gluo's girl, but time could not be turned back, and everything was too late. Because Su Qinghan likes carnations. How do you know that she likes carnations? Because this afternoon, I saw her go to the flower shop and buy carnations. Yujing glanced at Gluo secretly, fearing that he would misunderstand and think that he was following Su Qinghan again. However, Yujing never expected that Gluo's reaction would be so excited. What? You saw her go to the flower shop? Gluo grabbed Yujing's collar and directly pulled half of his body out of the car window. Gluo's eyes were wide open, and he looked like he was about to eat Yujing. Yes, the flower shop 2 blocks away. Yujing stretched out his hand and pointed in the direction. He felt painful, but he didn't dare to shout. When? Around 2:30. When Gluo heard the time Yujing said, he was so happy. Su Qinghan's whereabouts were finally known, and he still had hope. What did you see? Repeated carefully, don't miss a word. There is a cake shop opposite the flower shop. When I came out with a cake, I saw Su Qinghan bought a bunch of carnations and took a taxi away. Was there anyone else with her at the time? Which direction did she go? What was her expression like? At the time, she was alone, going to the cake shop. I thought she would be open in the afternoon. Her expression, she didn't have any expression. Yujing was a little panicked. When he saw Gluo's expression, it seemed that Su Qinghan had cheated on him and was missing. He was anxious to find someone. Good guy. No wonder he was so arrogant. It turned out that Su Qinghan ran away with someone. Yujing was a little happy, but he didn't dare to show it. Gluo didn't care about him at all, thinking about the situation in his mind. The timeline was arranged. At about 1 o'clock, he left the cake shop. Before leaving, Su Qinghan asked him to cook less in the evening and bring a cake when she went back. Then, around 2:30, she went to the flower shop, bought a bunch of carnations, and took a taxi to the west. Yujing thought Su Qinghan was going back to the cake shop, but in fact, Su Qinghan went somewhere else. Let's analyze it. First, when Gluo left, Su Qinghan made an appointment with him to bring back a cake in the evening, which shows that she had the idea of closing the shop in advance and going home early. Then, when Gluo went home, Su Qinghan did not continue to open the business, but began to pack up, close the store, went out, and went to the flower shop. Imagine, what if Su Qinghan didn't plan to open the business in the afternoon? She just wanted to open the business for the whole morning, then leave a cream cake in the refrigerator, go out at noon, decide to come back early in the evening, and then take the cake home. to spend Christmas Eve with GLUO. In this way, what Su King-hun encountered may not be so sudden. It is very likely that Su King-hun planned to do something, and in her impression, this matter was not a big deal and she could come back safely. As a result, just now, at 4 o'clock, an accident occurred. Su King-hun hurriedly saved the file, hoping to solve the problem by going back in time. However, Su King-hun's innate ability, Death Return, has been stolen by GLUO. Once she dies, she will completely disappear and will never come back. Carnations. GLUO is not unfamiliar with them. When he was young, on Teacher's Day, their class would use class funds to buy a bouquet of carnations for the teacher. The words of this flower are love, charm and respect. GLUO suspected that Su King-hun went to see someone and brought flowers with her. It is very likely that she is a patient. GLUO has been in contact with Su King-hun for more than a month, but he doesn't know if she has any important people in the hospital, or Su King-hun may not have any important people except Mu Yingluo. But today is Christmas Eve, and it is also possible that Su King-hun brought flowers to see some acquaintances. Then, in the hospital, Su King-hun encountered something, or someone. She had to set a time marker. Drive, go to the flower shop. Chapter 72, Judgment of Information. Yujing did not expect that after GLUO knew what he had done, he did not show an angry expression, but was eager to track down Su King-hun. Of course, Yujing had many thoughts in his mind, the most important of which was to escape quickly, but GLUO was watching him next to him, and he was at the mercy of others, so he could only obey. So, Yujing drove a sports car with broken glass, and took GLUO to the flower shop. Yujing wanted to take advantage of GLUO getting out of the car to run quickly, but GLUO was also cruel. He directly pulled out his car keys and locked him in the car, and he could not even follow him. He was just a tool man who could be summoned and dismissed at will. GLUO chatted with the owner of the flower shop for a while, but he didn't seem to get much useful information. He came out with a dark face. Yujing started the car carefully, but didn't know where to go. Where are we going? Yujing probably never spoke so softly in his life. GLUO sat in the passenger seat with his eyes closed and did not give an answer to the question. Yujing, on holidays like Christmas Eve and Christmas, aren't there very few people who would give carnations as gifts? Of course, they are usually roses. Yujing actually felt that Su King-hun must be going to visit a friend when she bought the carnations, but the question was why today? Carnations are a versatile flower. They can be given to elders or friends, but there must be very few people buying them today. I think so too. Let's go west and visit all the hospitals in the west. GLUO really couldn't think of a solution now. The owner of the flower shop didn't know anything, and Su King-hun was so cautious that he didn't even start a conversation when buying flowers. In the end, the information GLUO could only get was just a guess. Since he couldn't be sure either way, GLUO could only take the path with the greatest possibility. Combining all the information, GLUO still felt that Su King-hun might have gone to a hospital to visit a friend. Okay, what else could Yujing say? He just stepped on the accelerator and drove away. At this time, GLUO, who was sitting in the passenger seat, took out his mobile phone from his pocket and set the alarm to 1 o'clock in the morning. After navigating, there were 3 large public hospitals in the west of Changlin City, and dozens of small hospitals. For the sake of speed, GLUO directly gave up the small hospitals, and put all his energy on the large hospitals. Changlin City Third People's Hospital, we are here. Yujing could see that GLUO had no hostility towards him now, but he had no good intentions either. He just needed him as a means of transportation. He couldn't run away, but as long as he didn't cause trouble, GLUO wouldn't attack him. Park the car in the parking lot. GLUO naturally didn't think the investigation could be completed immediately. The entire hospital was so large that, even if Su King-hun came here to visit a friend, GLUO wouldn't be able to find it for a while, and he wasted time. Okay, Yujing had learned his lesson at this time. He didn't want to run away, but just followed GLUO, and obeyed him obediently. After parking the car, Yujing followed GLUO into the hospital. He first asked at the service desk, but unfortunately, he had no impression of Su King-hun having been there. Alas, it would be nice if there was a photo of Su King-hun. GLUO was very annoyed now. He described it for a long time, but the nurse at the service desk had no idea what Soo King-hun looked like. If there was a photo, it would be much easier to ask. However, GLUO had never dared to take a photo of Soo King-hun, especially to keep the photo on his phone. If Soo King-hun saw it, it would definitely be a lot of trouble. GLUO, I have a photo of Miss Soo. Yujing didn't expect that GLUO didn't even have a photo of Soo King-hun. He took out his phone and flipped to the one he had secretly taken. It wasn't an embarrassing angle, but it was a photo of Soo King-hun filling a cake. Her head was a little lowered, but her general appearance was not seen very clearly. Not bad. GLUO looked at the photo and smiled at Yujing for the first time since they met. Afterwards, he showed the photo to the nurses at the service desk, but the answer was no after all. GLUO led Yujing out of the hall. He looked at the layout of the hospital and led Yujing to the office building. Yujing originally thought that after GLUO asked the hospital reception, he would take him away. Who knew that GLUO led him all the way around and actually ran to the back door of the hospital office building secretly. GLUO, what are we doing? Looking for the monitoring room. GLUO had already made plans. In a place like a hospital, the layout of monitoring is very strict. It can be said that as long as there are visitors, they will definitely be photographed. Check the monitoring. Will the hospital allow it? Yujing was about to say that the hospital would never allow it, but GLUO gave him a cold look, and Yujing immediately shut up and dared not say anything more. Does everything require other people's consent? The cake shop hasn't been demolished yet. Did the gangsters ask for Soo King-hun's opinion when they came today? GLUO has completely lost his scruples now. He took Yujing's mobile phone, sent Soo King-hun's photo to his own mobile phone, and then cleared Yujing's photo library. Follow me. GLUO threw Yujing's phone to him, and Yujing hurriedly caught it and followed GLUO carefully. Logically speaking, such a large hospital has dozens or even hundreds of surveillance cameras. His monitoring room covers a large area and must be difficult to find. But who knew that GLUO went straight to the top floor of the office building, as if he had a radar, and then walked down 2 floors at random, and found the monitoring room. Don't make a fuss. GLUO turned around and told Yujing in front of the bridge door. Yujing nodded without hesitation and covered his mouth carefully. Knock knock knock. GLUO knocked on the door of the monitoring room gently, and then pushed the door and walked in. The 4 security guards inside didn't know what was going on and turned to look at GLUO in confusion. Hello, what do you have? GLUO didn't answer them, but slapped the top of the head of the nearest person, and the person fell down directly. Then GLUO's figure flashed, and the 2 security guards sitting on the chair were cut on the neck by GLUO's hand knife, and they fainted directly. The last security guard was the only one who had time to react. But he had just shouted 2 words when GLUO rushed over and punched him in the chest, and he fell down instantly. They are not dead. Yujing walked into the door carefully, looking at the 4 unconscious security guards. His face changed with fear. If GLUO really killed these 4 people, then he would be a witness. In order to keep it secret, could GLUO let him live? Not dead, just fainted. GLUO was still familiar with this situation. He sat in front of the computer, called up the surveillance of the front and back doors of the hospital, and watched it directly at 3 times the speed. Chapter 73, Lost. In the huge monitoring room, only GLUO and Yujing were still able to move. GLUO sat there and looked through the surveillance carefully, while Yujing sat on the chair at a loss, looking at the 4 unconscious people, and was very scared. As a rich second generation, Yujing felt that he was very brave. He was not a good person. He had done bad things and even criminal things, but those things, compared with GLUO, were simply the difference between a firefly and an artificial sun. Although Soo King-hun was beautiful, she was just the boss of a cake shop. Who was her boyfriend? A killer? Or a soldier king? This was too cruel. However, unlike Yujing's restlessness, GLUO checked the surveillance very calmly. He did not directly look through the surveillance for the whole day, but watched all the videos of the entrances and exits from 3 to 5 o'clock. This is really a very tiring job. The 3-speed video must be recorded with full concentration to confirm everyone. Even if GLUO had an iron body, he was tired after watching 4 or 5 videos. However, time did not give GLUO any room to relax. GLUO held on to his spirits and watched all the surveillance footage. Finally, he reluctantly confirmed that Su King-hun had indeed not been here. Let's go to the next hospital. GLUO hesitated for a moment and did not choose to delete the surveillance footage of the hospital. When Yujing saw GLUO get up and leave, he immediately followed him out the door. As soon as the two of them left the door, a doctor happened to pass by the door. Yujing followed behind GLUO and trembled with fear. GLUO, on the other hand, did not care at all and was so frank, as if he had never done anything. Don't look like a thief with a guilty conscience. It's okay if you're caught. Just knock him out if you're caught. GLUO turned around and glanced at Yujing, the rich second generation who had become a punching bag for a day. He immediately nodded vigorously. He gently closed the door of the monitoring room and followed GLUO out of the office building. Yujing was now almost accustomed to GLUO's rhythm. He stopped talking nonsense and took GLUO to the second hospital farther away and repeated the previous operation. This time, the receptionist at the service desk still had no impression of Su King-hun. Then the two went to the monitoring room, knocked out the security guard inside, and checked the surveillance video of the entrance and exit. I don't know if it's too exhausting. This time, GLUO watched it slower. What's more troublesome is that this hospital has 3 entrances and exits, 2 surveillance cameras at each entrance, and GLUO has 6 videos to watch. Yujing also found that GLUO was a little tired. He hesitated for a long time and poured a glass of water for GLUO. GLUO didn't refuse. After saying thank you, he only rested for 5 minutes and watched all of them. The result, still nothing. This result, not only GLUO, but also Yujing, was a little frustrated. After so much effort, there was no news of Su King-hun. Yujing also saw that GLUO was really worried about Su King-hun now. He was not having an affair or catching someone cheating. He was worried that Su King-hun was kidnapped by someone. He was so anxious that he was going crazy. Facing the restless GLUO, Yujing didn't dare to speak. When the two drove away from the hospital, it was almost dusk and the temperature began to get cold. The third hospital is very far from the city center, almost on the edge of the city. Not far away is a crematorium, and further away is a large cemetery. Overall, I don't know how the hospital's feng shui is, but the facilities are very complete. If you are cured, you can take the bus home. If you are not cured, you can go to the crematorium and cemetery, and you don't have to move around. On the way, the atmosphere in the car was suffocating. Yujing didn't dare to breathe, let alone talk. GLUO was in the passenger seat, fiddling with his mobile phone, searching for the latest news of Changlin City, as if he wanted to see flowers from it. We are at the hospital. Yujing felt that he was under great pressure, but facing GLUO, he was still as soft as dough. After getting off the parking lot, Yujing couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. It was already dark, and the two were in the suburbs, and the temperature was very low. What's more terrifying is that the lights of the crematorium in the distance are clearly visible. I don't know if it's an illusion, but Yujing feels that he can smell the smell of burning paper money. He trembled with cold and followed GLUO into the hospital. Compared to the previous 2 hospitals, this hospital is much smaller. The reception nurse at the service desk is very pretty, but the answer is still disappointing. They have never seen Su King-hun. To be honest, Yujing couldn't stand it anymore. He was so tired that he wanted to cry. He had been driving all afternoon, or sitting in the monitoring room in fear. His little heart couldn't take it anymore. But, what can he do? He still has to listen to GLUO's command. He is now familiar with the routine. He followed GLUO into the monitoring room and was very calm about the 2 security guards who fell down. However, this time, there was a problem. Just as Yujing was sitting on the sofa to rest and GLUO was concentrating on watching the video, the door of the monitoring room was suddenly knocked. To be honest, at that moment, Yujing was so scared that he almost jumped up. There were 2 people lying in the room with their legs spread out. If people outside saw it, they would definitely start shouting. Gluo paused his route, shook his head, and signaled Yujing not to say more. He walked to the door, unlocked it, and suddenly opened the door. Outside the room, the two security guards who came back from the toilet had no idea that it was a stranger who opened the door to greet him. But before they could ask anything, the stranger suddenly grabbed their necks. The two security guards felt like they were being pinched by a clamp, unable to say a word. No matter how they twisted their fingers, they didn't see any sign of the other party loosening. Then, Gluo lifted the two security guards up with one hand each, pulled them into the house, and kicked the door shut with his foot. The two security guards could still struggle at first, but after a while, they lost consciousness due to lack of oxygen. Gluo threw them on the sofa and stopped locking them. Yujing was frightened by the two men. He quietly checked their breath and found that they were not dead, so he breathed a sigh of relief. Gluo, however, had no doubts about his control of strength from beginning to end. He looked through the hospital's video footage, but this time, he became extremely irritated. Still nothing. Gluo turned off the surveillance and leaned back in his chair tiredly. Because of overusing his brain, Gluo felt very uncomfortable, with a headache and nausea. Gluo, where are we going? Yujing was lying down at this time, ready to be hammered, or he had completely let it go. Anyway, Gluo was looking for someone, not killing someone, so it was no big deal for him to help. What was really important was to satisfy Gluo, otherwise no one could save his Xiaoming. Go out first. Chapter 74, Fate. Gluo took Yujing out of the hospital. The two stood in the cold night wind, as if they were lost, and didn't know where to go. Yujing thought Gluo would be very anxious, and asked him to drive somewhere else. But at this time, Gluo seemed to have lost confidence. He stood in the empty parking lot, so depressed that he couldn't even speak. Facing Gluo in this state, Yujing didn't dare to urge him at all. He could only rub his arms and wait for Gluo to recover. In the cold wind, frosty white snowflakes fluttered down. Looking up, under the black sky, the snow swept in and soon became dense and tight. It's snowing again. Gluo's head hurts now. He tried to reorganize the clues and continue to look for Sukinghan's whereabouts, but looking at the snowflakes, Gluo's heart seemed to be half cold, and he suddenly lost the courage to move forward. He was tired, really too tired. Yujing, go away, let me walk around here alone. Gluo no longer needs Yujing. He doesn't need to look at the watch. Gluo knows it's 7 o'clock now. Gluo left home at 4 o'clock. In the past 3 hours, he tried his best to hurry up, but after so much effort, he got nothing. Okay. Yujing didn't expect that Gluo would let him go so easily. He was so happy that he wanted to jump up, but he didn't dare to show too much emotion. So, Yujing slowly got into his sports car and drove out of the parking lot very steadily. Then, the roar of the engine suddenly sounded, and the red sports car instantly turned into a shadow and disappeared into the night. Sukinghan. Gluo exhaled a breath of white air, rubbed his forehead, and walked out of the parking lot exhausted. At this time, Gluo actually didn't know where to go. He staggered out of the hospital and wandered around in the empty streets like a homeless ghost. Gluo is now at the edge of Changlin City. Most of the houses are bungalows, with only a few high-rise buildings. In the distance, the abandoned factories are dilapidated and secluded. The snowflakes gradually cover everything, making the whole world lonely. Gluo walked alone in the dark. He stroked his painful forehead. He didn't know where he wanted to go, nor did he know which direction to go. He just walked randomly, regardless of whether it was useful or not. Anyway, he didn't stop. It seemed that, as long as he didn't stop, there was still hope. He still hadn't failed, and there was still a possibility of finding Sukinghan. In a trance, Gluo walked to a secluded street. The houses around were dark, and only a small store was lit. Spring Cake Shop. Gluo walked to the front of the store in a daze, and suddenly found that this was also a cake shop, and the name of the store was also called Spring. It's such a coincidence that I ran into a branch. Gluo knew that Spring Cake Shop couldn't be a chain, but it was undoubtedly fate that he ran into this cake shop at this time. Boss, how many cakes are left? There are about 3.5 pounds. The shop owner behind the counter was a fat middle-aged man. He was sitting on a chair, watching a palace drama on his mobile phone. After discovering GLUO, he immediately paused the video and stood up. "Young man, you want all of them? I'll charge you for £3. Okay, pack them all." GLUO suddenly felt that everything was so familiar. He really met Su King-han at night, and also went to buy cakes. Okay, the shop owner was much better at doing business than Su King-han. He quickly packed the cakes, weighed them on the electronic scale, showed GLUO the £3.5, and then handed them to GLUO, and took GLUO's money for £3. Carrying a large bag of cakes, GLUO slowly left the cake shop. He did not walk far, but found a place to sit, sat down, and ate the cakes bite by bite. Not as good as Su King-han's, no, far worse. GLUO ate very slowly, as if savoring the taste. He watched the lights of the spring cake shop turned off, and the fat middle-aged man walked out, closed the gate, and then walked away to the other side. I shouldn't have bought so many. I should have left some, and sold them for another hour. GLUO ate 2 pieces in one breath, and was very disappointed with the middle-aged man's craftsmanship. He was used to eating the cakes made by Su King-han, and felt that this was a waste of materials. Find a place, and wait for death. At this moment, GLUO really didn't have the energy to look for Su King-han anymore. He planned to find a place to rest and recuperate, and then continue to look for it in a perfect state when his death was reversed. The stars in the sky are crying, the roses on the ground are withering, the insects are flying, the insects are flying, who are you missing? GLUO sang the nursery rhyme with a changed tune, and stood up from the stool. He staggered forward, ready to leave this dark and broken street. But, after walking a few steps, GLUO suddenly stopped. He turned around inexplicably, and looked at an alley not far away, his expression suddenly stunned. It's hard to say why. Anyway, GLUO suddenly wanted to go over and take a look. The alley itself was not wide, and on this street without even street lights, it was even more dark and scary. However, GLUO's heartbeat suddenly became very fast, so fast that he was a little flustered. GLUO felt a little thirsty. He moved his lips and looked around, but didn't see a place to sell water. GLUO took 2 steps forward, then 4 steps anxiously, then he suddenly dropped the cake in his hand, and hurried into the alley. In the darkness, GLUO took out his mobile phone. He wanted to unlock the phone with his fingerprint, but his hand suddenly shook, and dropped the phone on the ground. GLUO bent down, and touched the ground, where he could not see his hand in front of his face. When he touched it, it felt cold. GLUO suddenly felt something was wrong. He did not care about the dirt on the ground. He bent down, and squatted on the ground. He groped with both hands. One hand touched the phone, and the other hand felt the cold and soft touch. GLUO held the phone in his hand, breathing terribly fast. He looked up, and the snowflakes fell on his face. Not only did he not feel the coolness, but he felt a burning sensation. Impossible, impossible. GLUO was so flustered that his calves trembled, and he actually knelt on the ground, but GLUO seemed to be unaware of it. He trembled and unlocked his phone with his fingerprint, and then turned on the flashlight. The dark alley was illuminated by the light in an instant. GLUO's eyes couldn't even adapt immediately. He blinked hard, even though his eyes felt like they were being stabbed, but he still refused to give up. At this moment, GLUO's only thought was to see the identity of the body in front of him. Chapter 75. The feeling of missing. In normal consciousness, it is almost impossible for people to have any induction or telepathy. At most, the long-term relationship between husband and wife makes them familiar with each other, so that both sides understand each other's needs very well. They only need a glance to understand what the other needs. However, it is incredible that GLUO walked into the dark alley with an inexplicable idea and found the person he had been with for 4 years. On the ground covered with weeds, the girl named Su King-han was sleeping quietly, as quiet as a pool of clear water. Because of excessive blood loss, the girl's cheeks were terribly pale. She closed her eyes and still had a regretful smile until the last moment before her death. There were many scars on the girl's body. Most of them were long and deep, tearing the skin and flesh, but most of them were not deep enough to see the bones. The two short knives that the girl often used lay quietly beside her without any blood on them, obviously not hurting Sukinghan's enemies. Instead, the blood flowing from the girl's body dyed the entire ground red. The girl didn't struggle too much before she died, so the grass around her was still intact. Sukinghan Gluo seemed to have something stuck in his throat. He knelt on the ground, holding the girl's head with one hand and the girl's shoulder with the other, and pulled her to his side, letting the girl rest her head on his knees. Gluo seemed to be speechless. He couldn't say anything, just panting like suffocating. Gluo's hand stroked the girl's cheek, and it was cold and flexible. The girl had not been dead for a long time, and her body was still not stiff. Gluo hammered the ground angrily. He hammered very hard, again and again. The ground trembled, and the skin on his hands was broken, and a lot of blood flowed. If it's faster. Gluo really hated himself. It was because of him that Sukinghan died here. He didn't need the talent of Death Return at all. Wouldn't it be better to let Sukinghan take this ability well by herself? In the end, he took it away and let her die here in vain. Moreover, in fact, if he had been faster, even an hour earlier, Sukinghan might not have died. She might still be saved and could smile at him again. Who is it? Gluo's eyes were patrolling everywhere, but he didn't see any traces of fighting, and there were no extra footprints on the ground. Gluo checked carefully and didn't find anything that could be called a clue. Obviously, this is not the first scene, not the main place where Sukinghan fought with someone. Sukinghan started to escape after being injured and finally fled here and hid. Because of the serious injuries, he fainted here and finally died of excessive blood loss. Gluo gritted his teeth, and a whimper like a beast was injured came out of his throat. He lowered his head and pressed his forehead against Sukinghan's forehead. It was cold, so cold that it was terrifying. Sukinghan died before Gluo found her. Snowflakes fell all over the sky, dyeing the girl's body white. On this Christmas Eve, on this day worth celebrating, the girl died in a dark alley without even seeing the falling snow. What was she thinking before she died? How to defeat the enemy after going back? Or how to get more information? Or go back early on Christmas Eve? If Sukinghan knew the truth of everything and knew that Gluo had taken her Death Return, she would be completely dead this time. She would blame him, hate her, or thank him. The girl didn't know how many times she had died. She was probably used to death. She lay on the ground, as if she had fallen asleep forever, without struggle, anger, or unwillingness. In the snow-white night, the girl slept in front of Gluo, as quiet as a poem. Now, if Gluo chooses to be cowardly, if he doesn't go back to the past by dying, he will lose her forever. I will save you. I will save you at any cost. Gluo's heart was torn, as if it was painful, not only because of the loss, but more of guilt and resentment. He was angry at his carelessness and resented his stupidity. He was too careless. These peaceful days made him feel that everything was safe and sound, and he even forgot the existence of Zinky biopharmaceuticals and the evolver enemies that Sukinghan faced. He found a high-paying job, and a month's salary lasted for half a year. He also had someone he liked, living opposite her, and could get closer to her a little bit every day. Everything. How good, so good, like a beautiful dream. Now, the dream is over. Gluo cried softly, and he carefully examined the injuries on Sukinghan's body with tears, not letting go of every scar. There were no directly fatal wounds on Sukinghan's body. The heart, neck, brain, and arteries everywhere were intact. The cause of death can be determined as excessive blood loss. From the scars, Sukinghan seemed to have been cut by a sharp blade, but the strange thing was that the wound was too wide, and from top to bottom, it was almost completely symmetrical. This was not normal. After noticing this abnormality, Gluo took his mobile phone and carefully checked Sukinghan's dagger. He saw many small notches on the blade, which looked like damage caused by the collision of the blades. However, although the cuts were very small, they were V-shaped and looked like they were chopped by an axe, but whose axe was so thin. Gluo took Sukinghan's weapon and chopped it twice on the wall. Gluo didn't use much strength, but deep knife marks formed on the wall. Looking at the blade again, there was no wear or scratches. Obviously, Sukinghan's dagger was not made of ordinary materials, and it was almost difficult to damage the blade. Is Sukinghan's enemy a person who is very good at close combat? Jialuo couldn't determine the enemy's weapon now, but he could judge that the opponent's close combat ability was not bad. Otherwise Sukinghan, who had such a strong fighting ability, would not have suffered so many injuries. Where is the poison? Jialuo didn't have the ability to identify toxins. He just checked the girl's fundus, gums, and jaw, and didn't see anything abnormal. We must look around. Jialuo stood up from the ground, wiped the tears from his face, and began to search the surroundings. Jialuo first had to determine from which direction Sukinghan came. Knowing this, he could determine the main battlefield where she encountered the battle. Moreover, Jialuo also wanted to know whether Sukinghan's enemies were sure that she was dead. Did Sukinghan escape from the enemy's hands, but died because she could not be treated in time? Or did the enemy find Sukinghan and kill her with a finishing blow? But why? I can't find any trace of Sukinghan's escape, nor can I find any trace of the murderer. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.